Chapter 543. There were a total of 20 stills of A Chinese Ghost Story released on the official blog, mainly focusing on 4 important characters: Ning Kaichen, Nie Xiaoqian, Yan Qixia, and Granny Tree. After decades of development, Hong Kong's film industry was now extremely mature. Putting aside the factor of real scenes, the same movie that might take half a year to shoot in the mainland could be completed in 2 or 3 months in Hong Kong. Because of all aspects related to the entire film industry, Hong Kong had all the supporting companies and organizations. It was much simpler and more convenient for a crew to pull together people from scratch than in the mainland. There were plenty of professionals from the pre-shooting to post-production. The key was to be willing to spend money. The principle of "you get what you pay for" was vividly reflected in the stills of A Chinese Ghost Story. Ning Kaichen, Nie Xiaoqian, and Yan Qixia were 3 characters. One was a scholar, one was a ghost, and one was a Taoist. The costume design was unique, but it was not luxurious and exquisite. It was perfect in line with the character's identity. Only Granny Tree was different. As the biggest villain in the movie, Lu Chen's remake of this character was far better than the original in the dream world. Just the clothes that Chin Fei wore when she appeared were hired to work overtime by professional stylists, costume designers, and prop designers. The whole set of clothes cost 70,000 to 80,000 yuan. The stills taken from this were, of course, first class. Wow, my Fei's style is so bewitching. I like it. It's amazing. This once again proves my Fei's strength. She looks like whatever she acts. How many can she do? The real queen is unparalleled. If she's a villain, then so be it. I'll still be a fan. Don't say anything else. I'll download it as my wallpaper first. Who can tell me when this movie will be released in the mainland? I'll definitely go to the cinema to support it. Support +1. It's worth buying a ticket just for these stills. I'm looking forward to it. There were a total of 3 stills photos of Chin Fei. The most amazing one was undoubtedly her debut photo in the film. That kind of arrogant boss temperament, coupled with graceful and gorgeous clothes and accessories, with a fierce aura and the mature beauty, made countless fans on the blog exclaim in amazement, and have named her Queen. According to the statistics on Waves' blog, after the 2 official blogs released the stills of A Chinese Ghost Story, the total number of downloads of the 20 stills exceeded 5 million in just 12 hours. Among them, the 3 stills of Chin Fei accounted for more than 70%, and the most outstanding stills accounted for more than 40%. This showed that Chin Fei was currently very popular in the domestic entertainment circle. The charm of the stills itself was also indispensable. Otherwise, photos of Chin Fei would not have such a high number of downloads. The situation was similar in Hong Kong blogs, and the netizens and fans in Hong Kong were also very surprised. However, compared to the one-sided support of the mainland fans for Chin Fei, and even the male lead Lu Chin was indifferent to her, the netizens in Hong Kong saw other highlights from these stills. The highlight in their eyes was Nie Mingzhu, who played Nie Xiaoqian in A Chinese Ghost Story. As the female lead, Nie Mingzhu's stills were no less than those of Chin Fei. She also had 3 stills. However, compared to Chin Fei's gorgeous and domineering aura, Nie Mingzhu's elements were undoubtedly much lighter. In the 3 stills, 2 were white and 1 was red. Her eyebrows were lightly swept and her long skirt was fluttering. She looked delicate and melancholy like a lotus. However, it was precisely this classical temperament that deeply touched many netizens in Hong Kong. Nie Xiaoqian is so beautiful. I like the one where her white skirt is flying. It's like a dream. It doesn't seem real. I've never seen such a beautiful female ghost. She's exactly the same as my dream lover. It's over. I found out that I've fallen in love with her. What should I do? Nie Mingzhu is a beauty in our Hong Kong. How come I've never seen her works and photos before? She's so beautiful. Nie Mingzhu was Zhou Yi's cousin and the female lead personally recommended by the boss of Jiayang Pictures. Her identity was quite mysterious. She had not been in the entertainment industry before. A Chinese ghost story could be said to be her debut. Nie Mingzhu's appearance was needless to say. When Lu Chen saw her for the first time, he was also stunned. This girl with a beautiful temperament was also recognized by director Wan Shaoquan. In terms of appearance, Chen Fei and her each had their own merits. Chen Fei was more mature and sexy. However, in terms of temperament and aesthetics, Nie Mingzhu was undoubtedly more suitable to play the role of Nie Shaoqian. Because she had both the gentleness and elegance of a Jiangnan beauty and the purity and elegance of an ancient lady. The effect of wearing a custom-made ancient white dress made her look like a real Nie Shaoqian. Although Hong Kong had many beauties, such a pure and moving Xiangjiang beauty with a classical temperament was also very rare. It was very normal for Xiangjiang netizens to be praised on Hong Kong blogs. Many netizens liked it very much. Not only did they download it and save it on their computers, they also forwarded it to their personal blogs and forums. As a result, Nie Mingzhu's first work had not yet been released, but she had already become famous among the majority of netizens. The number of fans on her personal blog suddenly increased by dozens of times. Truly brilliant publicity did not rely on shouting and selling like a dolly pill, but on a silent and subtle influence. The publicity for A Chinese Ghost Story started from the stills. It did not boast about itself, but with the charm of a few outstanding photos, it brought about an effect that might require tens or even millions of advertising investment to achieve. On Wave's blog and Hong Kong blog, more and more netizens were looking forward to the early release of A Chinese Ghost Story. They all left comments on the official V to express their eagerness. This was undoubtedly an excellent sign. Lu Chen's studio struck while the iron was hot and released the first version of the trailer for A Chinese Ghost Story on February 8. At the same time, it was broadcast on television, the internet, and street media. This 3-minute trailer was rushed out during the Chinese New Year, but the quality was not bad at all. The content included the appearance of the 4 important characters, the poignant love clips of the male and female protagonists, and the exciting footage of the battle between the bosses. The hot release of the trailer immediately increased the anticipation of the fans who followed A Chinese Ghost Story. At the same time, it also pushed the publicity of the movie to a climax. However, Lu Chen's opponents would not bow down because of this. On the contrary, in order to suppress the publicity of A Chinese Ghost Story, they further increased their offensive and used various means to hype it up. The movie's publicity battle before Valentine's Day had reached the critical moment of life and death. Chapter 544. Late Night Tryst photographed, Jiang Wei and Wu Mingzhen's relationship exposed. Star Art's popular young man secretly met a popular female star in the middle of the night, acting intimately, suspected to be living together. Fake drama turned into reality. The male and female leads of Painted Skin kissed goodbye in front of their apartment building. Secret romance exposed, Jiang Wei's future as a star is worrying. On February 10, the entertainment pages of many media in Xiangjiang were flooded by Jiang Wei and Wu Mingzhen. The photos and news about their relationship were put on the headlines of many tabloids, accompanied by various bold headlines, which were particularly eye-catching. There were dozens of photos posted on the internet. It was said that a famous paparazzi had taken the photos of Jiang Wei and Wu Mingzhen at 11 p.m. on February 9. At that time, Jiang Wei and Wu Mingzhen were intimate, and they were suspected to be in a relationship and living together. This gossip immediately attracted a lot of people's attention. Jiang Wei was a popular young man in Star Art Entertainment. It had only been a year since his debut, but he had already released his debut album and acted in a popular TV series. With his handsome appearance, he had a large number of fans. Recently, he was the male lead of the blockbuster, Painted Skin, which was invested over 100 million by Star Art Entertainment and Huaguan Pictures. He was in the limelight and frequently appeared in the promotional activities of Painted Skin. The female lead of the scandal was the female lead of Painted Skin, Wu Mingjin. Wu Mingjin debuted earlier than Jiang Wei. She was beautiful, charming, and bold. She was regarded as a goddess by many fans and was more popular than Jiang Wei. When the two of them were filming Painted Skin together, there was a scandal, but because there was no evidence and both parties and their agencies denied it, it didn't cause much of a stir. But this time, they were captured by the paparazzi, and the scandal had solid evidence. Coupled with the media adding fuel to the fire, it was quickly hyped up. Both parties reacted quickly and immediately clarified on their respective blogs, saying that the two of them were only good friends. The so-called intimate photos were taken by the paparazzi using a fake position, and there was a third party present at the time. It was just a farewell after a gathering of friends. Jiang Wei also angrily rebuked the paparazzi who secretly took the photos, reserving the right to sue for invasion of privacy. The company that Jiang Wei and Wu Mingjin had signed with also released a statement saying that the two of them were not in a relationship. As for the rumor that they were living together, it was even more ridiculous because Wu Mingjin's assistant was also present, but she was ignored by the paparazzi. The media refused to let it go, and the person involved denied it desperately. This undoubtedly added fuel to the fire of the scandal. It's just a publicity stunt, Chen Wenqiang said disdainfully, who in the industry can't tell. Both sides are creating hype, and both Star Arts Entertainment and Huaguan Pictures are throwing money into it. Otherwise, do they really think that the media is so bored and has no other news to catch? That night, Lu Qin and Chen Wenqiang were invited by Zhou Yi to attend a banquet to discuss the publicity and screening of A Chinese Ghost Story. It could be considered a meeting between the two partners. Zhou Yi was there in person, Nie Mingzhu was there as well, and there were also two senior executives of Jiayang Pictures. After 3 rounds of drinking, everyone's topic shifted to their opponent, Painted Skin. Naturally, they also talked about Jiang Wei and Wu Mingjin's scandal. Chen Wenqiang scoffed at this. The premiere of Painted Skin is the day after tomorrow. They chose a good time. As the strongest opponent of A Chinese Ghost Story, Painted Skin was scheduled to premiere on February 12 and officially be released on February 14. It would be strange if there was nothing fishy about the scandal between the male and female protagonists suddenly being exposed at this time. In fact, it was nothing new for stars and artists to use scandals to hype up the movies or TV series they starred in. It could even be said to be an old trick. Most of the so-called scandals were manipulated by the companies that the stars signed with. But because this method was simple, crude, effective, and low in cost, even if there were any negative effects, it could at least attract a lot of attention. Therefore, it was played over and over again. Especially now that the publicity for Painted Skin was at its peak, it was normal for Star Arts Entertainment and Huaguan Pictures to make such a move. It was nothing more than to dominate the public's attention and make Painted Skin a big hit when it was screened in Xiangjiang. Then, they could ensure their own advantages in the subsequent competition. The business world was like a battlefield. Not to mention sensationalizing scandals, some artists and companies would do a lot of things in order to promote themselves. Chen Wenqiang had been in the entertainment industry for so many years, so he had seen it all. Of course, because it was his opponent, he was definitely very unhappy. Why don't we also do some targeted publicity? Zhang Yifan, the general manager of Jiayang Pictures, said as he looked at his boss, Zhou Yi. As expected, Zhou Yi looked interested. What do you mean? Zhang Yifan suddenly became a lot bolder. He said with confidence, they can create scandals, but so can we. I think Mr. Lu Qin and Miss Nia are more valuable. Of course, we can be more subtle about it. There's no need. Zhang Yifan's solution was actually very simple. It was like fighting fire with fire. Let Lu Chen and Nie Mingzhu also create some scandals. With their relationship with Qin Fei, they could definitely divert the public's attention in an instant and make their opponents suffer in silence. In terms of fame and strength, how could Jiang Wei and Wu Mingjun compare with Lu Qin and Qin Fei? Nie Mingzhu was also very popular on the internet. It didn't take much effort to create scandals to achieve excellent results. However, his suggestion was flatly rejected by Lu Qin. There's no need. We don't need to follow in the footsteps of our opponents. The success or failure of a movie ultimately depends on its quality. I have confidence in A Chinese Ghost Story. Of course, Lu Qin knew the benefits of creating scandals. It saved time and effort and produced quick results. However, he hated this kind of method from the bottom of his heart, not to mention that it involved Qin Fei. Therefore, he didn't even consider it. If Zhang Yifan wasn't Zhou Yi's man, Lu Qin would have fallen out with him. What kind of lousy idea was this? Zhang Yifan couldn't help but look a little embarrassed after being rejected so bluntly by Lu Qin. However, Zhou Yi smiled and said, "That's right. We still need to rely on our strength. Let them do it. The one who laughs last will be the winner." Zhou Yi supported Lu Qin not only because Lu Qin was strong enough, but also because the girl sitting next to him, Nie Mingzhu, would never agree. He thought for a moment and said, "I'll think of a way to invite more friends to the premiere on the 18th. The premiere of The Painted Skin was on the 12th and the official release of A Chinese Ghost Story was on the 18th and the official release of A Chinese Ghost Story was on the 21st. Although they avoided a face-to-face confrontation on the same day, the competition between the two sides would not weaken because of this. The day of the victory was also getting closer and closer. Chapter 545. February 12, 2017's Valentine's Day was still 2 days away. Valentine's Day originated from the West. The people of Xinjiang who had experienced the colonial era also regarded Valentine's Day as an important festival, especially for many young men and women. This day was even more important than the Spring Festival. Sending flowers and chocolates, dating for dinner and a movie, then hanging out in a bar until late at night, and finally getting a room in a hotel to be romantic until the early morning had become the standard routine for many people to celebrate Valentine's Day. Of course, the consumption power brought by this was incomparably strong. Big and small cinemas in Xinjiang were often prepared in advance to welcome a full flow of customers. Therefore, Valentine's Day was undoubtedly the hot peak period of the new year. Many powerful and ambitious new films often chose to be released at this time to push up their first day and first week box office. On February 14th, it was estimated that there would be 7 new films released in 129 cinemas in Xinjiang. Plus the films released before and after the new year, the competition was extremely fierce. Everyone was staring at this fat cake. Without the strong competition from Hollywood blockbusters, The Painted Skin was undoubtedly the one that attracted the most attention out of the 7 new films. The stills and trailers that were released in the early stages were also recognized by film critics and many audiences. Coupled with the indiscriminate bombardment of media advertisements, it brought about a high level of anticipation in the market. Rewrite the story of Strange Stories from a Chinese studio, create a first-class Chinese fantasy blockbuster, and conquer the audience with the best special effects. This was the advertising slogan of The Painted Skin. On the evening of February 12, Wagwan Pictures and Star Art Entertainment held a grand world premiere of The Painted Skin at the Oriental Hollywood Theater. The predecessor of the Oriental Hollywood Theater was Dongzhou Cinema. It was one of the earliest cinemas in Xinjiang. Its history could be traced back to the beginning of the last century. It had a history of more than 100 years, and it could be said to be a household name in Xinjiang. Located in the prime area of Central, the Oriental Hollywood Theater had been renovated and expanded 3 times. Now it was also the largest cinema in Xinjiang, with 19 independent broadcast halls, including a hall that could accommodate thousands of audiences. Because of its seniority, high reputation, and large scale, Xinjiang and even some Hollywood blockbusters chose the Oriental Hollywood Theater as the venue for the premiere. Huaguan Pictures held the premiere of The Painted Skin in the Oriental Hollywood Theater, undoubtedly showing its ambition. Just after 7 p.m., the small open-air square in front of the Oriental Hollywood Theater was already surrounded by a large number of media reporters and onlookers. Of course, there were many celebrity fans holding up placards. A long red carpet was laid from the street in front of the square to the entrance of the theater. There was a signature wall, a flower arch, and a media interview area. People who didn't know better would think that there was a grand prize ceremony being held here. However, the number of celebrities that appeared on the red carpet tonight was incomparable to some awards ceremonies. This could be seen from the cheers of the fans in the stadium and the flashes of the cameras. Annie, Zhang Meiyun, Gu Qing. The owners of these names were all the new generation figures in Xinjiang's entertainment circle. One of the advertising points of A Painted Skin was youth idols. The movie gathered a large number of popular new artists. The men were handsome, and the women were beautiful. They had also released the news on their respective blogs early, so a large number of fans came to the scene to support them, making the atmosphere of the premiere very lively. As for the media, needless to say, Huaguan Pictures has already spent millions of yuan on publicity in Hong Kong, and all the newspapers, magazines, and websites that share in the profits have all sent their elites to help. Jiang Wei. At 7:39, the male lead of Painted Skin, Jiang Wei, finally appeared on the stage. This popular young man of Star Art Entertainment seemed to be completely unaffected by the recent scandals. He wore a white suit and got out of the Mercedes-Benz. He was in high spirits and had a smile on his face, which immediately attracted a lot of attention. Jiang Wei. Jiang Wei. A group of female fans suddenly became excited. They held up their support sticks, signs, and gifts. They shouted Jiang Wei's name and rushed towards him in the crowd. The security staff at the scene saw that the situation was not good, so they immediately formed a human wall to stop these crazy fans from crossing the line. Jiang Weiji waved at them with satisfaction, then stepped on the red carpet with his head held high, and walked to the autograph table accompanied by flashes. After signing his name, he walked to the media interview area to be interviewed by the reporters. In fact, under normal circumstances, the lead and main cast of a movie would only be interviewed by the media after the premiere. Huaguan Pictures broke the convention by making the premiere into an awards ceremony, which could be considered unique. Or rather, sensationalism. Mr. Jiang Wei, can you talk about this movie? More than a dozen microphones and recording pens with media logos were placed in front of Jiang Wei. One of the reporters couldn't wait to ask, how much box office do you think Painted Skin will get? Jiang Wei said confidently, Painted Skin is a good movie, and it's also an exciting movie that's worth the audience spending money to watch. Its special effects don't lose out to Hollywood blockbusters at all. As for the specifics of the story, please go to the theater and watch it yourself. I won't spoil it here. As for the box office, he paused, then continued, I predict that it should have a box office of more than 30 million in Hong Kong. It is not impossible for it to exceed 50 million, because the quality of Painted Skin is good enough. Although most of these media reporters were specially invited and would not deliberately make things difficult for him, Jiang Wei still left some leeway in his answer, which was considered more cautious. Although the film market in Hong Kong could not be compared to that in China, it still had a scale of 3 to 4 billion. With the investment and publicity costs of Painted Skin, it was very possible to achieve a box office of 30 to 50 million in Hong Kong. After all, this period of time was the craze for watching movies, and there would be a wave of aftershocks after the festival. Another reporter asked, as far as I know, a Chinese ghost story, which is in the same genre as Painted Skin, will premiere on the 18th. What do you think of this movie? The corners of Jiang Wei's lips curled up as if he was silently looking down on them. He smiled and said, I don't pay much attention to the movie you mentioned, so I can't say I have any opinion on it. But I believe that with the strength of Painted Skin, it is enough to defeat any opponent. His last few words were said in a heroic manner, but also filled with an overbearing sense of aggressiveness. Jiang Wei's incomparably confident look made the reporter's eyes light up. The clicking sound of camera shutters was endless, accompanied by a continuous stream of questions. Mr. Jiang Wei, can you talk about the scandal between you and Miss Wu Mingjun? May I ask if you really... Chapter 546. The Painted Skin premieres to rave reviews. It officially hits all major cinemas in Hong Kong on Valentine's Day. Many celebrities are here to cheer for the premiere of Painted Skin. Creating a Hong Kong fantasy masterpiece, The Painted Skin's first-class special effects are comparable to Hollywood blockbusters. Jiang Wei Hao says The Painted Skin's Hong Kong box office is 50 million. Thoughts on the premiere of The Painted Skin? On the second day after the premiere of The Painted Skin, the entertainment section of all the major media and websites in Xiangjiang was flooded by this new film. Those celebrities who participated in the premiere published blog posts one after another, praising how wonderful the story of The Painted Skin was and how outstanding the special effects were. Many Xiangjiang film critics strongly recommended The Painted Skin on newspapers and blogs, believing that it was a rarely seen masterpiece of supernatural and fantasy in the past few years. It was a masterpiece that was worth spending 30 yuan to enter the cinema to watch. Their reviews and the praises from the media had created a lot of hype for the upcoming Painted Skin, and the effect was undoubtedly very good. All the major cinemas had basically booked all the tickets for Painted Skin on Valentine's Day. Even the tickets for the 15th and 16th were more than half booked. This was the power of advertising. Before a new film was released, the audience was easily influenced by the media. To a large extent, the media's advertising determined the direction of consumption. Of course, a film's reputation was not built by critics and advertisements. Whether The Painted Skin would be a huge success in the box office depended on the audience's evaluation. But before that, The Painted Skin was unparalleled in the Hong Kong film market. It could be said that it was the most coquettish film. Aren't you worried at all? On the Red Rose pedestrian street in Xiangjiang Central, in the midst of the bustling crowd, Chen Fei curiously asked Lu Qin, who was holding her hand, "In a few days, our movie will premiere." Today was Valentine's Day. The pedestrian street in the bustling business district of Central was very lively. The flower beds on both sides of the street were full of blooming flowers. There were even government volunteers giving roses to couples passing by. The shops along the street had already put up posters to celebrate the festival. Even the air was filled with the smell of romance. Chen Fei flew to Xiangjiang last night. Valentine's Day was such an important holiday. She definitely had to be with Lu Qin and would stay in Xiangjiang until the premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story. For this reason, she deliberately turned down a lot of work and program invitations. Tonight, the two of them had a heartwarming dinner together. After dinner, they went out to go shopping. Hand in hand, they mingled with pairs of couples. It was also a very happy thing. Most importantly, this was the second Valentine's Day that Chen Fei and Lu Qin had spent together. But Chen Fei was not the kind of girl who regarded romantic love as her life. Today was the premiere day of The Painted Skin. As the strongest competitor of A Chinese Ghost Story, the movie's promotional campaign had been so intense a few days ago that even she, who was far away in the capital, could smell the smoke of gunpowder. In contrast, the publicity for A Chinese Ghost Story had always been tepid and maintained its original rhythm. This inevitably made Chen Fei feel a little worried. Most of the time, the two competitors were one step ahead and one step ahead. At least for now, the painted skin, which had the advantage of being the first, had left a Chinese ghost story far behind. Whether the painted skin, which was about to premiere in a few days, could catch up with its opponent's footsteps naturally became her concern. Lu Qin smiled and said, "I'm not worried because I know it's useless to worry. Besides, today is Valentine's Day. Are you really going to talk to me about work?" Chen Fei rolled her eyes at him. "I'm just concerned about you." Although the success or failure of a movie did not have much of an impact on Lu Qin financially, even if he lost all the tens of millions of yuan he had invested, it would not be to the extent of hurting him. However, A Chinese Ghost Story was Lu Chen's first movie, and it was also competing with The Painted Skin. If it failed miserably at the box office or even did not get support, it would be a big blow to his reputation and career. Some people in the industry said that Lu Qin was too egotistical. Singing did not mean that he could act in TV, and acting in TV did not prove his strength in movies. It was not easy to walk the road of being a triple star. If A Chinese Ghost Story failed, it would undoubtedly give these people a reason to ridicule him. Not to mention Huaguan Pictures, who was now like a mortal enemy, who knew how they would laugh at him. Lu Qin held her hand and said, "I know you treat me the best." Although their relationship had reached the most intimate level, at this moment, Lu Chen's gentleness still made Chen Fei feel shy and sweet. The two of them stood on the street hand in hand. There was an endless stream of people coming and going, but it was as if the whole world only existed for the two of them. Everything else was just the background. "Sir, your girlfriend is so beautiful. Why don't you buy her a bouquet of roses?" At this moment, a little girl carrying a flower basket stumbled over and tried to sell her rose bouquet to Lu Qin. How can one be enough? There were roses everywhere on the Red Rose pedestrian street, and there were also free roses. Therefore, the little girl's business was quite bad. There were more than a dozen bouquets in the basket, but no one was interested. Chen Fei had a free rose in her hand. However, the little girl did not give up. She blinked her big watery eyes and looked at Lu Qin pitifully. This kind of trick was often useless to couples who were used to seeing little girls selling flowers. Lu Qin was not a fool, but he still asked, "How much is a bouquet?" The little girl quickly said, 100 yuan. There are 12 flowers in a bouquet. They were just picked this morning. They are very fresh. Lu Qin counted the bouquets in her basket, took out the money and said, "I want all 11 bouquets of flowers here." The little girl was overjoyed. She bowed and said, "Thank you, sir, thank you." She directly gave the roses and the basket to Lu Qin, and then happily disappeared into the crowd. Lu Qin carried a basket of roses and said to Chen Fei, with a smile, "I don't remember giving you many roses. I'll make it up to you today." Since the two of them had been dating, Lu Qin had not given many roses to Chen Fei. Chen Fei glanced at him coquettishly and said, "You just realized." Although she said that, she still happily took a large bouquet of roses from Lu Chen's hand. Chen Fei lowered her head and sniffed, then asked, "Where are we going next?" Lu Qin showed 2 movie tickets as if he was performing a magic trick. "To see a movie, of course." "Ah." Chen Fei whispered, "What movie?" Lu Qin smiled and said, "Painted Skin." Chapter 547. From east to west, at the end of the central Red Rose pedestrian street was the Rose Theater. Among the hundreds of large and small cinemas in Xiangjiang, the Rose Theater was definitely not the largest and had the most advanced facilities. In fact, it only had 5 independent projection halls and did not have a 3D giant screen. It was not on the same level as the Oriental Hollywood Theater that was not far away. But in terms of popularity, the Rose Theater was no less than the Hollywood Theater, and in terms of popularity among couples, the former was even more popular than the latter. This was because all the seats in the Rose Theater were double seats, which were lovers' seats. They were spacious, comfortable, and extremely private. Other than Hollywood blockbusters, the movies played all year round were mainly romantic comedies, so it was deeply loved by couples. On Valentine's Day, the theater also gave out extra gifts such as chocolate, popcorn, and so on, so the tickets for the 5 screening halls had been booked early. Chen Wenxiang had gotten Lu Chen's tickets through his connections, otherwise he would not have been able to buy them now. The tickets were VIP tickets, and the seats were VIP boxes with better privacy. The movie started at 8:10. When Lu Chen brought Chen Fei over, it was already close to 8. He glanced at the screen in the hall outside and found that the screening for The Painted Skin had reached at least 35%. This was very impressive. Usually, other than Hollywood blockbusters, when Hong Kong films or Sino-Hong Kong co-productions were first released, the screening rate was between 10% and 30%, and then adjusted according to the subsequent market response. 35% at the beginning was basically the treatment of Hollywood blockbusters. Considering that there were many new films being released today, the producers of The Painted Skin, Huaguan Pictures, and Star Art Entertainment, had definitely spent a lot of effort on public relations in the cinemas, in order to make it a hit. This undoubtedly brought considerable pressure to their competitors. For example, Lu Chen's A Chinese Ghost Story, after many efforts and coordination by Jiayang Pictures, was only 20% of the screening in several major cinemas on the 21st, and it was not completely guaranteed. This was because the market situation was ever-changing, just like the weather. Although it could be predicted in advance, it could change at any time. A Chinese Ghost Story, which was released after The Painted Skin, was bound to face the pressure of the former. Coupled with the box office sales of The Painted Skin, the cinema chains increased their production rate. Other films in the same period, including A Chinese Ghost Story, would definitely have to make way. They couldn't possibly hinder the cinema from making money, right? That was why Lu Chen had brought Chen Fei over today. He did not neglect romance and work. He did not place too much importance on the success or failure of A Chinese Ghost Story, but he would not be indifferent to his competitors. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Lu Chen and Chen Fei sat down in a private room. The theater attendant left after serving them coffee, drinks, and small gifts, leaving the two of them some privacy. Before leaving, the waiter looked at Lu Chen curiously. She felt that this tall and handsome guy was a little familiar. He seemed to be a star, but there were also stars who came to the Rose Cinema to watch movies, so she didn't pay much attention to him. Chen Fei leaned against Lu Chen's chest and giggled. Does this count as going deep into the enemy's rear to observe them? Lu Chen couldn't help but laugh. How can it be so exaggerated? After a pause, he continued, in fact, as far as I'm concerned, I still hope that both China and Hong Kong can make more good movies and regain the market we've lost. Since entering the new century, the domestic film market had continued to be popular, and the box office had been rising steadily. It was already the second largest source of box office in the world, second only to the United States, and it was expected to surpass it in the next 5 years. However, more than 50% of such a large market share was occupied by imported films, especially Hollywood blockbusters. Moreover, the latter accounted for more than 90% of movie-related peripheral products. Many Hollywood movies relied on the sales of peripheral products to achieve a net box office profit of more than 200%. In contrast, domestic films were pitifully weak in this regard. This made many knowledgeable people in the domestic film industry cry out loudly. Revitalizing domestic films and improving the added value of movie peripheral products had become the mission and responsibility of the new generation of young filmmakers. In this regard, Lu Chen, who had just entered the film industry, had also tried it. A batch of figurines, posters, props, accessories, toys, and so on for A Chinese Ghost Story had been produced in Xiangjiang and would be sold in cinemas on the day of the release. When he came in just now, Lu Chen deliberately bypassed the sales area of the movie peripheral products in the hall and found that there were basically no peripherals for The Painted Skin on sale except for the posters. Although Hollywood blockbusters had an absolute advantage in this regard, local film companies could not get used to this advantage and put themselves in the position of bystanders. They were worried that they would lose money and do nothing. On the other hand, this was also a manifestation of lack of confidence in the film itself. Lu Chen's words were not to show how high his moral integrity was in front of Qin Fei, but from the bottom of his heart. The more he integrated into the film industry, the more he felt. Qin Fei held his hand, and her bright eyes flashed. What she likes is precisely this kind of Lu Chen. The atmosphere in the private room quietly became warm and sweet, and then the movie began. Qin Fei adjusted her sitting posture and leaned comfortably into Lu Chen's arms. Lu Chen hugged her waist, and the two began to quietly enjoy The Painted Skin, produced by Huaguan Pictures and Star Art Entertainment. After the 110-minute movie, it was already 10 p.m. Qin Fei stretched and yawned cutely, looking a little sleepy. She turned her head and kissed Lu Chen's face, saying, "It's over. Let's go back." Lu Chen nodded and asked, "How do you feel?" Qin Fei, hee. Perhaps she felt that such a response was too simple, so she added, "The special effects are not bad." The special effects are not bad. Lu Chen completely agreed with this evaluation. It was worthy of being the most powerful special effects production company in Hong Kong. Although its level could not be compared with the top Hollywood peers, at least it had first-class quality. As a fantasy blockbuster, Lu Chen gave The Painted Skin 8 points in terms of the performance of the special effects alone. The full score was 10 points. He stood up and said, "Let's go and find a place to have a drink." Today was Valentine's Day, and tonight was a romantic night. It was enough to spend 2 precious hours here. What followed should be a sweet time for the two. Chapter 548. On February 14th, Painted Skin was officially released in all major cinemas in Xiangjiang, with 37.5% screening. The box office on the first day was 7.5 million. With such a result, it was undoubtedly the box office champion of the day, and created the best box office result for a domestic film in Hong Kong in the past 13 months. Such a bright first-day box office also boosted the confidence of Huaguan Pictures and Star Art Entertainment. They increased the number of advertisements in major media, and the publicity campaign was vigorous. The media who got the benefits naturally praised the film, saying that it was the first fantasy film produced by China and Hong Kong, that it surpassed Hollywood, and that it opened up a new genre of ghost films. The actors who participated in Painted Skin all posted celebratory blog posts, and the male lead, Jiang Wei, proudly said on his blog that he had underestimated the box office results of Painted Skin. The 50 million Hong Kong box office was not the end, but the beginning. And on another important promotional front, Hong Kong blogs and forums, there were also a large number of blog posts and posts praising Painted Skin, most of which were comments from the so-called ordinary audience. The plot is wonderful, the special effects are outstanding, it's worth spending money to support it. I didn't expect our Xiangjiang to make such a wonderful special effects blockbuster, I have to give it a like. I went with my girlfriend yesterday, and the box office I booked a few days ago was worth it. I also went with my girlfriend, and she said it was very good and wanted to watch it again. Wonderful, really wonderful. There were so many praises on the blogs and forums that people felt it was their loss not to watch it. Coupled with the lucky draw launched by the official V, the momentum on the internet was no less than in reality. But unlike newspapers and magazines where readers could only passively accept, in the infinite and free world of the internet, not everyone could be bought over or fooled. Voices of opposition appeared much faster than expected. I watched Painted Skin yesterday. I can only say that the 35 yuan was thrown into the water. The special effects of Painted Skin are really good, but the plot is terrible, and the story logic is messed up. Terrible. I'm not exaggerating, I left with my girlfriend halfway through, it was not interesting. Painted Skin is really not that good, it's not as good as the media made it out to be. It's only the special effects that pass. I said I was very disappointed after watching it. Is this the Ghost and Ghost film that they invested 100 to 200 million yuan in? The story is so melodramatic. The voices of opposition first appeared on the Hong Kong forum. The film and television section was one of the most active sections of the Hong Kong forum. There were hundreds of thousands of active registered members. Most of them were young people who loved movies and TV shows. The Hong Kong forum was undoubtedly the best place to get the audience's feedback for a newly released movie. After filtering out the fake PR and marketing accounts, the comments of the forum members were often meaningful and could truly reflect the feelings of the young audience. Of course, in such an important area of public opinion, there was no lack of publicity from public marketing companies. However, although there were many IDs praising Painted Skin, they could not suppress the voices of opposition. Most importantly, most of the positive comments came from the forum's Smurfs or marketing accounts, while the negative comments were mainly from senior members. Anyone who had been on the forum for a few days would know which one was more trustworthy. And these voices were quickly fed back to the blog, triggering more discussions. Hence, on the internet, the comments on Painted Skin were polarized. There were many good and bad comments, and the two sides could not come to an agreement, leaving the audience at a loss for what to do. At 9 o'clock on the 15th, a famous Xinjiang film critic, Wang Dong, posted a film review on his blog. The main character of this post was Painted Skin. Excellent special effects could not cover up the extremely pale plot. The messy story made this movie a disaster, so much so that a few people in the same hall as me left early. The special effects of Painted Skin are not so good that people can ignore these shortcomings. Although the media has hyped this movie to be comparable to a Hollywood blockbuster, it is still not a classic blockbuster after all. It is just an imitation. The director tried to adapt the original horror story into a poignant love story, mixing too many things into it. Most of the actors are young and beautiful, but their acting skills are not good. When I walked into the theater with hope in my hand holding the movie ticket, what I got was disappointment. Xinjiang's film critics emerged in large numbers after Xinjiang's movies entered the golden age. At that time, they were very influential in the media. But since entering the internet era, where everyone could become a film critic and publish articles on the internet, film critics have been declining day by day. Most of the remaining film critics had become the mouthpieces of public relations and marketing companies. The difference between them and online pushers was getting smaller and smaller, and they were becoming more and more immoral. But there were still film critics with a conscience, and Wang Dong was undoubtedly one of them. He was a famous writer in Xinjiang's literary world, but he had always been paying attention to the development of Xinjiang's movies and wrote film review articles for many newspapers and magazines. Different from those marketing film critics who sold articles for a living, Wang Dong never took money from public relations companies when he wrote film reviews. Therefore, his film reviews were relatively more fair and just, and thus he had a high influence among many Xinjiang audiences. Especially many Xinjiang people in their 30s and 40s, they liked to read his film review articles. Of course, Wang Dong's film reviews were not perfect. He was more inclined towards artistic films rather than commercial films. Therefore, he often criticized those popcorn movies that sold well at the box office. As for the so-called sh*t, 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 and Laughing Family Happy movies produced in Hong Kong, they were criticized by Wang Dong to be worthless. This also caused him to become a figure that was not very popular in Hong Kong's film industry. But even if he was hated and despised by others, Wang Dong never changed his film review style. The producers of those praised movies would be complacent because of the free good reviews, but the producers of The Painted Skin, Wagwan Pictures, and Star Art Entertainment would definitely be very unhappy. The first to open fire was the male lead of The Painted Skin, Jiang Wei. He directly scolded Wang Dong's film review on his blog, saying that he took someone else's money to slander The Painted Skin. His words were very fierce. Although Jiang Wei quickly deleted his blog post, his criticism of Wang Dong still caused an uproar on the internet, and also made The Painted Skin a hot topic on Hong Kong's blogs. Chapter 549. On February 15, the box office for Painted Skin was 8.6 million, up 900,000 from the previous day. Because on the 15th, all the major cinemas increased the number of screenings for Painted Skin, and the tickets for the next few days were basically booked out, the box office results were not affected by the negative comments online. It continued to lead the Hong Kong box office. On February 16, the box office was 8.35 million, down slightly from the previous day. From the 14th to the 16th, the total box office for Painted Skin was 24.45 million. The results were extremely dazzling. It was said that HGC and Star Art Entertainment were already preparing for a celebration. But on the internet, the number of negative comments for Painted Skin suddenly skyrocketed. Many viewers who watched the film out of admiration began to complain on blogs and forums, saying that they were cheated or that the ticket price was not worth it. Although HGC and Star Art Entertainment increased their marketing efforts, they still could not suppress the voices of opposition. The plot was chaotic, the story was cliché, the actors were clumsy, except for the special effects, everything else was simply unsightly. Some people joked that watching the trailer for Painted Skin was enough, and that there was no need to spend money, because the trailer concentrated the best parts of the special effects. On February 17, the box office for Painted Skin suddenly dropped to 4.27 million, a drop of nearly 50%. The bloody reality was like a heavy slap in the face, forcefully slapping HGC and Star Art Entertainment in the face. It made the official blogs of both sides lose their voices, and the articles that were advocating for the film became a joke. On the 17th, the screening rate for Painted Skin reached 47.68%, the highest in a few days. But the box office dropped so fiercely, and there was only one reason. There was a problem with the film itself. A few days ago, with the help of Valentine's Day, coupled with the strong promotion of the film's producers, Painted Skin had an astonishing number of reserved tickets, and it seemed that the situation was indeed good. But the audience saw with their own eyes. They might be deceived by the promotion for a while, but they would not be fooled forever, and the power of word of mouth was infinite. Painted Skin's reputation was terrible, really terrible. On the 17th and 18th, there were a large number of ticket refunds, so it was reasonable that the box office would fall precipitously. After being slapped in the face, Wagwan Film and Star Art Entertainment did not seriously reflect on the reasons behind it. The higher-ups believed that the unfavorable public opinion on the internet was the root of the problem. Therefore, not only did they not adjust their publicity strategy, but they also increased their investment in the media. Jiang Wei and a group of main actors also did their best to wave flags and shout for the film on different occasions. Actually, they had no other way out. If the box office fell too fast and too hard, then the cinemas would first have to reduce the number of screenings, and the reduced number of screenings would in turn suppress the box office. Such a vicious cycle was an outcome that Wagwan Films and Star Art Entertainment did not want to see. Even if they had to throw in a lot of money, they had to rebuild the reputation of Painted Skin. This was because it would affect the domestic screening, and that was where the box office was most important. At this time, HGC Films and Star Art Entertainment, who were a little overwhelmed, had forgotten one thing. A Chinese ghost story was about to be released. At 8 p.m. on February 18, A Chinese Ghost Story, held its premiere at the Triumph Theatre. Unlike Painted Skin, which was as grand as an awards ceremony at the Oriental Hollywood Theatre, the premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story was quite low-key and simple. There was no noise of gongs and drums, and there was no ceremony for celebrities and actors to walk the red carpet. There were not even many media reporters invited. It gave people the feeling that Lu Chin Studio and Jiayang Pictures had made a movie together, and then invited their relatives and friends to come and watch it together and give them some opinions. It was so low-key that it was a little unseemly. However, although it was low-key, there were many entertainment reporters who rushed to the entrance of the Triumph Theatre that night. This was because the official Weibo of A Chinese Ghost Story had already released the news in advance. In addition to the main actors of the film, members of the Xiangjiang Film Association, and media reporters, the guests attending the premiere also included many celebrity artists in the Xiangjiang entertainment industry. Among them was Lu Gangxing. Most of the entertainment media were willing to send people to take a few photos just for this superstar. What's more, the stars of A Chinese Ghost Story, Lu Chen and Chen Fei, were now well-known mainland artists in Xiangjiang. Autumn in My Heart, which was being broadcast on Xiangjiang satellite TV, made Lu Chen and Chen Fei's popularity in Hong Kong rise steadily. Not only was this TV series deeply loved by those housewives, but it also had a great influence among the young people in Xiangjiang. The number of fans of the two was already comparable to that of the A-list stars in Xiangjiang. In addition, there was Nie Mingzhu, the female lead of A Chinese Ghost Story. Because of the stills, she became popular before the movie was released. However, her background was very mysterious, so there was naturally no lack of paparazzi to investigate. Because of this, a large number of reporters and fans had gathered in front of the Triumph Theatre just after 7 o'clock. There were also many pedestrians and tourists who did not know the truth. Some fans held up paper cards with the words, "High price for tickets," and looked at the passers-by with anticipation. At the premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story, 150 of the tickets were given out by the official V in the form of a lucky draw. These fans wanted this kind of ticket. There were also some real fans who wanted to see their idols up close. Such a large number of people appearing at the entrance of the theater inevitably brought about a little chaos. Fortunately, the theater had already arranged security personnel to maintain order at the scene. The Triumph Theatre was also an old big theater. It was located in the bustling area of Causeway Bay, very close to Victoria Park. Its scale and strength were second only to the Oriental Hollywood Theatre. Whether it was a Hollywood blockbuster, a mainland film, or a local Hong Kong film, if the premiere was in Xiangjiang, then the premiere would not be held at the Oriental Hollywood Theatre, but at the Triumph Theatre. Lu Chen and the main cast of A Chinese Ghost Story were the first to arrive at the theater. After getting out of the car, he and Chen Fei were immediately surrounded by reporters. The flashes were all over the place, and the clicking of shutters was endless, mixed with the shouts of fans. As there was no red carpet ceremony, Lu Chen quickly pulled Chen Fei through the safety passage formed by the security personnel and entered the theater. He did not accept any interviews from the reporters. The other crew members followed closely. Director Wan Shaoquan was a little speechless. Why are there so many people? Chen Wenxiang, who was walking with him, smiled and said, "This is a good thing. It means that we are getting a lot of attention, Lu Gangxing." Before he could finish speaking, a tsunami of shouts came from outside the theater behind him. Chapter 550. Lu Gangxing was here. In fact, Lu Qin did not expect to be able to invite the King of Hong Kong. After all, the other party was not an ordinary person. His usual work schedule must be full, and it was not easy to meet him. It was only out of courtesy that he sent someone to deliver an invitation letter over. In the end, to Lu Chen's surprise, Lu Gangxing actually said that he would personally attend the premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story, and even posted a message on his blog. Lu Gangxing had the highest number of fans on Hong Kong blogs. Among all the artists in the entertainment industry, he was also the most influential. Therefore, many fans came to meet their idol in advance tonight. Lu Gangxing must have known this, so he did not take the VIP entrance of the underground parking lot of the Triumph Theatre. Instead, he walked through the front like everyone else so that his fans would not be disappointed. Lu Gangxing had always had an excellent reputation when it came to treating his fans. Because of this, he was deeply loved and worshipped by his fans, which indirectly strengthened the reputation of a Chinese ghost story. More than 10 minutes had passed since someone began to shout Lu Gangxing's name until he appeared in front of the theater lobby. Brother Sheng, Lu Qin and Qin Fei were waiting together. That night, Lu Gangxing was still wearing a dark blue suit and a white shirt. When he saw Lu Qin, he showed a familiar smile. "We're not late, are we?" Lu Gangxing didn't come alone. He had a female companion with him. This female companion was in her 40s. She was tall and slender, wearing a purple evening gown. She had a graceful bearing and a beautiful face. Her long hair was dyed dark brown and fell to her shoulders. Although she was no longer young and crow's feet could be seen at the corner of her eyes when she smiled, no one would ignore her existence standing next to Lu Gangxing. In fact, her name had already been called by many people outside. Lu Gangxing introduced, "This is Tina, my good friend. This is Lu Qin, Chen Zai." The woman's eyes flickered. She took the initiative to extend her hand to Lu Qin and said with a sweet smile, "I've heard the Hong Kong students talk about you several times. You're really a hottie." Lu Qin quickly held her hand and said, "Hello, Sister Tina. I didn't expect you to come." Tina's Chinese name was Shifang. She was an artist who debuted at the same time as Lu Gangxing. She was also a superstar in Xinjiang's film, television, and music industry. Since her official debut, Shifang has released a total of 12 solo albums, with a total sales of tens of millions of records. Many of her classic songs have been popular in the country for a time, with countless fans. Shifang had also acted in many films and TV series. She had won as many awards as Lu Gangxing in music and film, and even more in music. It was just that 5 years ago, Shifang had a serious illness. During her treatment and recovery, she had basically retired from the entertainment industry. She rarely appeared in public, but her influence was still there. Today, she had come with Lu Gangxing to attend the premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story. Tomorrow, she would definitely make the headlines of the entertainment section. Shifang looked very good. There were rumors that she had an incurable disease. Now she must have recovered. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to talk and laugh with people. Lu Qin introduced Qin Fei to Shifang. Qin Fei was also Shifang's fan. She was very excited to see her idol, and Shifang also liked Qin Fei. The two of them soon had a pleasant conversation, leaving Lu Qin and Lu Gangxing aside. Lu Gangxing shook his head a little helplessly. He asked Lu Qin, "Chen Zai, is it convenient for us to talk?" Lu Qin, "Of course, no problem." Lu Gangxing certainly didn't bring Shifang over for no reason. What he talked about with Lu Qin was not complicated. He just hoped that Lu Qin could tailor a few works for Shifang's new album. After 5 years of silence due to illness, Shifang was ready to make a comeback. She needed a new album to announce her comeback. But in terms of music, the Heavenly Queen had always been very picky. She had originally graduated from the Hong Kong Conservatory of Music. She was not lacking in professionalism and appreciation. She had high requirements for her works. She could also arrange her own lyrics and play the piano. She could also be regarded as a talented woman. However, in today's Hong Kong pop music world, what was lacking was excellent composers. The powerful and talented seniors had either retired, passed away, or had lost their inspiration. Shifang could not choose a few satisfactory songs. With her name, the agency could invite a lot of songs, but quantity did not mean quality. If Shifang was not satisfied, she would not make a comeback. The Heavenly Queen of Hong Kong was quite stubborn and would not listen to anyone. Under such circumstances, as Shifang's friend in the circle, Lu Gangxing recommended Lu Qin to her. Today's Lu Qin was no longer the person who only a few people in the circle knew when he first came to Hong Kong. His talent had been widely known, and his works were also known by more and more people. The nickname Gold Digger spread like wildfire in the circle. There were also many singers and entertainment agencies who came to him for songs. The best example was undoubtedly Xu Jing. At present, her new album, Time is Good, had achieved very good sales in Hong Kong and the mainland. With the two works, Summer Wind and Courage, written by Lu Qin for her, she was steadily ranked among the top female singers in Hong Kong. After listening to a few works sung and written by Lu Qin, Shifang immediately made a decision. That was why she appeared here tonight. After understanding the cause and effect, Lu Qin said without hesitation, "Brother Xing, let's make an appointment to talk." Lu Gangxing had always appreciated Lu Qin. Without the support of this superstar, he could not have developed so smoothly in Hong Kong and could not have integrated into the circle so quickly. With this favor, how could Lu Qin not give face? Besides, writing songs for Shifang was also a very honorable thing. He did not know how many songwriters begged for it. Hearing Lu Qin agree happily, Lu Gangxing said with a smile, "Thank you." His gratitude was very sincere, which made Lu Qin's heart move. In Hong Kong's entertainment circle, Lu Gangxing and Shifang were recognized as good friends. The friendship between the two could be traced back to more than 20 years ago, which became a popular story. The two had also been rumored, but in the end, it was not true. Shifang had two boyfriends, but they broke up amicably and she was still single. And Lu Gangxing already had his own wife and children. On this side, Shifang and Qin Fei were almost done talking. It was almost 8 o'clock, so everyone entered together. The #1 screening hall of the Triumph Theatre was full, and there was no special ceremony. The premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story officially began. Chapter 551. 90 minutes, 1.5 hours, and 2 classes, he could take the high-speed train from Hangzhou to Nanjing. Also, he could watch a movie in the cinema. The premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story at the Triumph Theatre started at 8:00 in the evening and ended at 9:30. Clap. 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 When the lights in the movie hall lit up, the silent audience seemed to have suddenly woken up from a deep sleep. No one knew who took the lead to applaud, and then the applause quickly spread throughout the audience. At first, it was a little messy, but soon it became the same rhythm, like a summer storm, fast and fierce, shaking back and forth in the theater. One by one, the guests stood up and turned to the seats where the crew members of A Chinese Ghost Story were sitting, sending their sincere and warm congratulations. As guests invited to the movie premiere, after watching the movie, no matter how they visualized it, applauding was a basic courtesy, but there were differences in etiquette. A Chinese Ghost Story received the highest respect. Among the hundreds of guests, there were representatives of film and television entertainment companies, stars and artists in the entertainment industry, media reporters and writers, and members of the Xiangjiang Film Association. They were also members of the jury of the Xiangjiang Film Support Project. These people, who represented the upper echelons of the film and television industry in Xiangjiang, could not be easily bribed. They had their own positions, their own standards of judgment, and their own preferences. It was all because of the strength of A Chinese Ghost Story that they were able to sincerely congratulate the crew members. Congratulations. The first to congratulate Lu Qin was Lu Gangxing. You made a good movie, very good. Lu Qin held the hand of the king of Xiangjiang and said gratefully, "Thank you, brother Sheng." Lu Gangxing patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Next time there's a good script, save a role for me." Lu Qin quickly said, "That's my honor." With Lu Gangxing's status and influence in the Xiangjiang entertainment industry, he had a lot of scripts to choose from. Countless film and television companies wanted to cooperate with him. Of course, the premise was that they could afford Lu Gangxing's salary, which was one of the highest among the male actors in Xiangjiang. And he took the initiative to ask Lu Qin for a role, not only to give face to Lu Qin, but also to express his appreciation for a Chinese ghost story. Shi Fang, who was with Lu Gangxing, interrupted, "Count me in." Lu Qin felt a little dizzy. In his memory, there was only one movie that Lu Gangxing and Shi Fang had worked together. This movie, which was produced 10 years ago, had set a box office record in Hong Kong at that time, and had also achieved very high results in the mainland. Although the two were very good friends, this was the first time they had worked together in a movie. If Lu Qin could invite these two to join his new movie, it would definitely cause a sensation in the media without any promotion. Even if their salaries were very high, as long as the script wasn't too bad, it would be difficult for them to make a loss. The key was that they were high-class enough. Any film company that could hire these two would be considered a success. Of course, Lu Gangxing and Shi Fang might be just being polite, so Lu Qin wouldn't lose his mind immediately. He was only stunned for a moment before he smiled and said, "I'll write the script when I get back tonight." Lu Gangxing and Shi Fang both laughed. Shi Fang sighed and said, "I like the theme song of this movie very much." "I like it very much," she asked, "What's the name of this song?" Lu Qin replied, "The road changes with the people." He answered in Cantonese because the theme song was a Cantonese song. There was also a Mandarin version for the mainland. "The road changes with the people," Shi Fang softly recited these words, and a trace of disappointment appeared on her face. It seemed that she had thought of something. Lu Gangxing quietly held her hand, then said to Lu Qin, "You should go up." Lu Qin nodded and took Qin Fei, and all the main cast members of A Chinese Ghost Story, onto the stage of the theater. Lu Qin, Qin Fei, Nia Mingzhu, Ma Rongjin, Wan Shaoquan, Chen Wenxiang. Other than Lu Qin and Qin Fei, the others were basically unknown in the film and television industry in Hong Kong. Only Ma Rongjin was considered a senior, but he had been a flop for a long time. No one had heard of Wan Shaoquan at all. Lu Qin had only recently become famous in the circle. It could be said that the lineup of A Chinese Ghost Story was not strong at all. There were not many actors, and there were very few investments and special effects. However, the movie was unanimously approved by the picky guests. The applause lasted for a few minutes before it ended. As for the ordinary audience who were lucky enough to attend the premiere, they cheered loudly and even clapped their hands until they turned red. Thank you everyone." Lu Qin led the crew to thank the guests and the audience. Next, it was time for the interview. Many cameras had already been set up, and the long and short cameras were aimed at the actors. In particular, Lu Qin, Qin Fei, and Nia Mingzhu received the most attention from the reporters. When it was time to ask questions freely, a reporter sitting in the front row couldn't wait to stand up and said loudly, "I'm a reporter from Film Weekly. May I ask Mr. Lu Qin?" The media interview lasted for more than an hour. None of the reporters in Hong Kong were easy to deal with. Even if they also liked A Chinese Ghost Story and had received a red packet from Lu Qin's studio, they would still ask tricky questions. At this time, it was very difficult to see the ability of the interviewee. If they made a fool of themselves, they would definitely be ridiculed by some media in the newspapers tomorrow. Lu Qin was no longer a fledgling artist. The memories of the 3 lives in the dream world had also made him far wiser and more mature than his peers. Even in the face of the aggressive questions from the reporters, he still handled it with ease. After a few rounds of exchanges, although the reporters from several newspapers and websites could not say that they were convinced, they at least secretly admired Lu Chen's sophistication and cleverness. They could not find any flaws in him at all. They had no choice but to shift the focus to Chen Fei, Nie Mingzhu, and the others. Miss Chen Fei, everyone knows that you are Lu Chen's girlfriend. You have starred in 2 TV series together, and both of them are absolute male and female leads. Why is the female lead of A Chinese Ghost Story Miss Nie Mingzhu, while you play a fierce and vicious villain? A reporter from a certain newspaper stared at Chen Fei, and asked without blinking. Chen Fei had been in the industry for many years. What kind of reporters had she not met? Faced with such a question, she smiled and said, "It's precisely because Mr. Lu Chen and I starred in 2 TV series that I changed my role this time. This way, the audience will not be tired of it, and I can also challenge my own acting skills." She held the microphone and spoke with confidence. Her whole body was filled with a beautiful and confident aura, making it impossible for people to nitpick. In A Chinese Ghost Story, Chen Fei was the big boss, and here, she was still the queen. Chapter 552. At 11:20 p.m. on February 18, the premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story at the Triumph Theatre ended. The guests were very satisfied because they saw a wonderful movie and did not waste their precious time. The media reporters were also very satisfied. They had interviewed a lot of wonderful content and went back with the red packets. As for the lucky audience, they were even more speechless. When leaving the theater, some audience members were stopped by the reporters outside to interview them. They said that the movie was very wonderful and that they would buy tickets to watch it again after it was officially released. The premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story was not very grand, but the effect was very good. However, it was too early to say that the movie was a success. The real test would be after the 21st. The only thing that could prove the movie was the box office. Young Master Lu. When Lu Chen was about to leave with Chen Fei, he was stopped by Chen Wenxiang, who rushed over. "Let me introduce you to a gentleman." The gentleman that Chen Wenxiang introduced to Lu Chen was in his 50s. He had a thin face, wore glasses, and had gray temples. He gave people a feeling that he had been through hardships and had a rather elegant temperament. "This is Mr. Wang Dong." Chen Wenxiang was very respectful to this person. The Mr. he addressed was not the kind of Sir or Miss, but a respectful title for a highly respected senior. After knowing the identity of the other party, Lu Chen was a little moved. Lu Chen had heard of Wang Dong for a long time. This famous writer in Xiangjiang was a real scholar. He used to be a professor at Xiangjiang University, wrote for many newspapers and magazines, and published many novels that reflected various social aspects of Xiangjiang. He was also a film critic who cared about Xiangjiang's movies. A real scholar had his own style. Wang Dong never took any benefits when writing film reviews. He wrote according to his heart. Not long ago, he severely criticized The Painted Skin, and even caused the male lead of The Painted Skin, Jiang Wei, to scold him on his blog. However, Jiang Wei also suffered a lot because of this. Not only was he reprimanded by many people in the industry, but he also lost more than 100,000 fans on his blog. In the end, he had to apologize publicly. Wang Dong had offended many people in the industry, but he also had many friends. For the premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story, Lu Chen Studio and Jiayang Pictures sent out many invitations, including many well-known film critics in Hong Kong, including Wang Dong. However, neither Lu Chen nor the people from Jiayang Pictures expected Wang Dong to come. That was because Wang Dong had always bought his own tickets to watch the movies and never accepted the hospitality of the producers. Therefore, when he saw Wang Dong in person, Lu Chen couldn't help but feel surprised. He quickly stretched out his hands and said, "Hello, Teacher Wang. I didn't expect you to come as well." Please forgive me if I've neglected you. Wang Dong let out a faint smile and shook hands with Lu Qin. Then, he said, I heard a few friends talking about you, so I came to see you. I'm not disappointed. Chen Wenxiang, who was standing at the side, was pleasantly surprised. He had been in the Xiangjiang film and television entertainment circle for decades and knew a lot of people from all walks of life. Naturally, his understanding of Wang Dong was far better than that of Lu Qin. Therefore, he was very clear that the words, not disappointed, sounded very ordinary, but when they came out of Wang Dong's mouth, the meaning was really extraordinary. Although Lu Qin didn't understand why, he still thanked him. Thank you. Wang Dong let go of his hand and his expression became serious. But your movie is far from perfect. Many of the details are crude. Although the characterization of the characters is excellent, as a writer and film critic, Wang Dong's perspective on movies was undoubtedly different from that of ordinary audiences. He mainly evaluated the shortcomings of A Chinese Ghost Story from a professional and artistic point of view. Lu Qin accepted all these opinions. The filming of A Chinese Ghost Story, including post-production special effects, editing, and dubbing, only took a total of more than 2 months. Although the movie did not involve many characters and plots, time did not allow it to reach a perfect level. On the other hand, the excessive pursuit of perfection also meant a big increase in the cost. After Wang Dong finished speaking, he gave a positive affirmation. In general, the flaws don't obscure the beauty. Work hard. After saying that, he nodded at Lu Qin and turned to leave. Why did he leave just like that? Lu Qin was a little dumbfounded. He quickly called out, Mr. Wang, young Master Lu, you don't have to ask him to stay. Chen Wenxiang stopped him, shook his head and said, Mr. Wang's temper is like this. He doesn't like to be polite with others. Wang Dong's temper was famous in the literary circle for being straightforward. When he talked to others, he often spoke bluntly and didn't use polite words. As a result, he had offended many people. Lu Qin said helplessly, I still want to talk to Mr. Wang a little more. Chen Wenxiang said with a smile, he has already told you a lot. Wait for the blog tomorrow. Chen Wenxiang was really happy. Wang Dong's influence among the young people in Xiangjiang was very weak. Many young people in Xiangjiang had never heard of him, but for those in their 40s or 50s, there were few who did not know his name. Xiangjiang people in their 40s or 50s were also an important source of box office. Since Wang Dong recognized A Chinese Ghost Story, his film review would definitely bring a lot of box office to the film and expand the audience. This was undoubtedly a good sign for A Chinese Ghost Story, which had not been officially released yet. People in Xiangjiang were very superstitious, and Chen Wenxiang was no exception. As the director of Lu Qin's studio, he had high hopes for the studio's first movie, not to mention that his daughter was also in A Chinese Ghost Story. At this moment, no one noticed Ma Rongjin, who was standing in the corner of the lobby. Tonight was like a dream for Ma Rongjin. How long had it been? Even he himself couldn't remember when was the last time he stood under the spotlight and was surrounded by reporters. This long-lost glory made Ma Rongjin feel that it was unreal. Although the reporters' attention was mainly focused on Lu Qin, Chen Fei, and Nie Mingzhu, as the most important supporting actor in A Chinese Ghost Story, he, an old actor who had been down and out for many years, still received some attention. As long as the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story was passable, it would not be a problem to find another role. There was no need to struggle every day in the Lion Rock film and television city for a chance to get a lunch box. At this moment, Ma Rongjin prayed to the gods in the sky, hoping that the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story would be a big hit. The higher the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story, the higher his value and the higher the pay he could get. At his current stage, he really had nothing else to ask for. On February 21st, a week after The Painted Skin was released, A Chinese Ghost Story, hit all the major cinemas in Xinjiang and began to compete for the box office. Chapter 553. A Chinese Ghost Story was officially released on Tuesday, February 21st. And just yesterday, its biggest competitor, Painted Skin, announced its first week's box office. From the 14th to the 19th, the movie co-produced by Huaguan Pictures and Star Art Entertainment had a total of 36.77 million, which was quite a dazzling result. In the past decade, Xinjiang's local movies had been in a bad situation under the impact of Hollywood blockbusters. A large number of film and television production companies had closed down, the industry's talents had left, and there were few good box office results. Although Painted Skin was a co-production, it was advertised as a Hong Kong production, so the 36.77 million box office in the first week broke the record for a Hong Kong film in the past 3 years. Huaguan Pictures and Star Art Entertainment naturally celebrated. Even Jiang Wei, who was forced to apologize for scolding Wang Dong, became active again on his blog, posting several blog posts to show off, feeling very proud of himself. But the people who didn't know the truth would think that Painted Skin was doing very well, and that the Hong Kong box office breaking the 100 million mark was just around the corner, but the people who knew the inside story had a very different view. Painted Skin's results in the first 3 days were indeed eye-catching. The 24.45 million box office was incomparable, showing a soaring momentum. However, on February 17th, Painted Skin box office suddenly dropped to 4.27 million, compared to the 16th, a drop of nearly 50%. On February 18th, Painted Skin box office 3.2 million, continuing to drop sharply. It was not until the 19th that the box office of 4.85 million showed signs of recovery, accumulating 36.77 million in the first week, and maintained around 5 million for the next 20 days. On the surface, it looked very good, a box office of 5 million a day. Many Xinjiang movies might not be able to achieve even after a few weeks of release, but it could still crush the Hong Kong films released at the same time. But an insider revealed that starting from the 19th, Huaguan Pictures and Star Art Entertainment started to push the market. To put it bluntly, they were buying box office. The so-called buying box office referred to some film producers using unfair competition to create the illusion of high box office, squeezing out competing films at the same time. That was, the producers paid for a large number of movie tickets, then gave them to the audience as gifts or sold them at a low price. Because the cinema was a scarce resource, buying box office to create false box office figures, not only would it mislead the audience's choice, but it would also cause pressure on other films. There was the phenomenon of buying box office in Hong Kong, but it was more common in China. The source was Hollywood in the United States. It was an unspoken rule in the film industry, and everyone had a tacit understanding about it. The box office earnings were only 5 million, so the actual box office earnings could be imagined. Most importantly, Painted Skin had received a flood of negative reviews online, and the subsequent box office results were worrying. And at this critical moment, A Chinese Ghost Story was released. There was no need to say much about the competitive relationship between A Chinese Ghost Story and Painted Skin. Both films were adapted from Pu Songling's Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio. First of all, the theme was similar, and they were both fantasy ghost films. Moreover, there were other grievances between the two sides. A Chinese Ghost Story was released a week later than The Painted Skin. Naturally, the two were like Mars colliding with Earth. It was quite eye-catching in the industry and could be considered one of the hottest topics in the industry. Many people in the industry believed that it was impossible for A Chinese Ghost Story to beat Painted Skin in the box office. First of all, the investment between the two was several times different, and the cast of the latter was also stronger than the former. As for the most important publicity, Painted Skin, Crushed, a Chinese ghost story, in all aspects. This could be seen from the premieres of the two films. If A Chinese Ghost Story had not benefited from Lu Gangxing and Shifang, it was estimated that not many media outlets would have published such a large coverage. There was another very important point. The Painted Skin had the upper hand and consumed a large portion of the box office potential. Naturally, it also put a lot of pressure on the box office of the same genre, A Chinese Ghost Story. Everyone had seen this kind of film before, so they really had to think twice before taking out money. Everyone's money did not fall from the sky. Finally, Painted Skin would definitely suppress A Chinese Ghost Story by buying box office earnings. Therefore, the latter was facing a very serious situation. Some professionals estimated that the box office earnings of A Chinese Ghost Story in Hong Kong should be between 15 to 25 million. The real battle between the two sides was still in mainland China. Regardless of the public opinion in the industry, A Chinese Ghost Story arrived on time at all the major cinemas in Xiangjiang. On that day, the screening for A Chinese Ghost Story was 75%, which was even less than the 20% estimated a few days ago. The reason was naturally because of the malicious pressure from its competitors. 75% screening could not be said to be too bad, but compared to Painted Skin, it was undoubtedly a long way off. As for the booking, the online and phone booking results of A Chinese Ghost Story were also not ideal. After the premiere on the 21st, only a mere 20,000 tickets were booked. Ah oui, I'm downstairs. Chi Zihao held his phone and asked in a low voice, when can you come down? He was very nervous, and his palms were sweaty. He tried his best not to make his voice tremble. His slightly strange appearance made the aunties who passed by cast him a strange look. Chi Zihao did not notice at all. All his attention was on his phone. He was worried that Hui would stand him up. Chi Zihao was a second-year student at Zhuolongmingde High School in Xiangjiang. Recently, he had fallen in love with a first-year junior. Chi Zihao came from an ordinary family. He was fair and clean. Although he wasn't exceptionally handsome, his looks weren't too bad either. It was just that he was a bit introverted and timid, so he hadn't held hands with any girls until now. And to pursue a girl, one must be bold and thick-skinned. Chi Zihao liked Jia Hui, this straightforward and cute junior, so with the encouragement of his good friend, he mustered up the courage to pursue Jia Hui. Unfortunately, there was no lack of suitors for a junior like Jia Hui. In addition, he was not good with words and was not stunning, so far, he could only say that there was a little hope. He was at least 3 streets away from success. Tonight was the first time that Chi Zihao had asked Jia Hui out. Although the latter had agreed, Chi Zihao was still worried about the gains and losses before he met her. Why are you here so soon? Fortunately, Jia Hui did not intend to go back on her word. She said on the phone, then give me another 10 minutes, can you? Chi Zihao suddenly felt as if he had been granted amnesty. He quickly said, no problem, 100 minutes is fine. Jia Hui's uncontrollable laughter immediately came from the phone, making Chi Zihao's face turn red. He wanted to slap himself, it was too embarrassing. After ending the call, Chi Zihao scratched his head in annoyance. He had a feeling that if he could pursue success, it would all depend on his performance tonight. In the end, he lost a point. Chapter 554. Chi Zihao waited anxiously. Jia Hui didn't come down after 10 minutes, and of course, she didn't let Chi Zihao wait for 100 minutes. About 20 minutes later, a girl in white sportswear came down from the corridor and stood in front of him. She said shyly, "Did I keep you waiting?" Chi Zihao looked at the beautiful junior sister in front of him in a daze, feeling that his heart was about to explode. He couldn't speak. Jia Hui blushed under Chiziheo's stare. Hey, hey, hey. At this time, a girl in yellow, about 13 or 14 years old, suddenly rushed out from behind Jia Hui. She rushed at Chiziheo, who was still in a daze, and said, "Are you a fool? What are you doing here?" Chiziheo was shocked and instinctively took a step back. He seemed to have just woken up from a dream. Jia Hui grabbed the girl in yellow and introduced her. "This is my sister Nihue. She wants to come with me. Is that okay?" Jia Hui's sister looked similar to her, but her character was weird, and it was obvious that she was the kind of person who was very bold and not easy to deal with. "Boy, do you want to hit on my sister? If you want to hit on her, you have to please me first, otherwise." She breathed through her nostrils and squinted at Chiziheo with an expression that said, "I'm a delinquent." Jia Hui looked helpless. Obviously, she couldn't do anything about her sister. Chiziheo was not too stupid. He came to his senses and quickly said, "No problem. Then take Sister Nihue with you." "Humph." Nihue curled her lips and said, "Don't call me so intimately. I'm not your sister. Where are we going to play tonight?" Even though Nihue was a few years younger than him, Chiziheo was still a little scared to look at her. He quickly said, "Let's go to the movies. A Chinese ghost story is on tonight. Lu Chen and Chen Fei are the leading actors." He had heard from his friend that Nihue had recently been fascinated by a TV series called Romance in My Heart, which was on the air on satellite TV. The leading actor and actress in the series were played by Lu Chen and Chen Fei. Therefore, Chiziheo searched for information about these two celebrities online and found out about A Chinese Ghost Story. Jia Hui was pleasantly surprised. "That's great. I was just about to see it. Watching a movie again. Old-fashioned." She preferred to go to the arcade or the ice skating rink. Chiziheo couldn't care less about her feelings. Seeing that Jia Hui liked it, he finally felt relieved. Of course, there was still a small problem. He had only booked 2 movie tickets online, and he didn't know if there were any left. Fortunately, with the development of technology, smartphones could be installed with ticket booking apps. Therefore, Chiziheo used his phone to book an additional ticket for Nihue in the taxi. The tickets for tonight's official screening of A Chinese Ghost Story were selling well. He was lucky enough to catch the last bus and grab one of the last 2 tickets. Of course, it was impossible for it to be next to the seat he had originally booked. However, this was exactly what Chiziheo hoped for. However, he soon discovered that his thoughts were completely wrong. When he arrived at the cinema to pick up the tickets, Nihue directly snatched the 2 tickets next to each other and left the one that Chiziheo had just booked, leaving him speechless and speechless. After all, Chiziheo was not a fool. In such a situation, he did not foolishly stay in the corner and watch. Instead, he discussed with others and paid a price to change his seat. Finally, he sat next to Jia Hui. This made Nihue look at him in a different light. "You're not stupid, are you?" Chiziheo scratched his head with a silly smile. He looked at Jia Hui, his eyes full of joy. Jia Hui blushed again and whispered, "Let's watch a movie." The lights in the cinema dimmed, and the opening scene of the movie appeared on the big screen. The voices of the audience disappeared, and everyone's attention was focused. People in Xiangjiang liked to watch movies, and the quality of the audience was usually relatively high. During the movie, everyone would consciously keep quiet, and their mobile phones would be set to vibration mode, so as not to disturb others watching the movie. Chiziheo looked around and found that the cinema, which could accommodate nearly 200 people, was full, and most of the audience were couples. He couldn't help but sneak a glance at Jia Hui again. But Jia Hui's eyes were only fixed on the screen. Chiziheo's attention turned to her. He adjusted his sitting posture and began to enjoy the movie. The first thing that appeared on the screen was the logo of Jiayang Pictures. This logo was not very familiar to the audience in Xiangjiang, and the logo of Luchin Studio was even more unfamiliar. After the short opening, the movie officially began. A close-up of an old stone tablet appeared on the screen, and the three big words, Lanrua Temple, appeared in the audience's line of sight. The background was an ancient temple shrouded in the night. Coupled with the embellishment of the soundtrack, a kind of desolate and strange atmosphere quietly attacked, making the audience's heart involuntarily rise. Chi Zihao, who was originally a little distracted, was also attracted. The story of The Chinese Ghost Story unfolded. The scholar who stayed in the ancient temple at night, the beautiful woman who quietly appeared, and the seemingly routine love encounter was the beginning of a bloodthirsty killing. In just 2 minutes, the audience was brought into a strange world. Against the background of the blood-red brocade, the 4 handwritten words, A Chinese Ghost Story, appeared, and the theme song of the movie, The Road Follows the Man, played. The protagonist, Ning Kaichin, also appeared on the stage. A down-and-out scholar trekking in the wilderness, suffering all kinds of hardships, formed a perfect match with the theme song. Chi Zihao chose to watch A Chinese Ghost Story because Jia Hui liked the protagonist of the movie. He himself did not like to watch this kind of supernatural and fantasy movie. He liked to watch Hollywood blockbusters. Therefore, he did not have any expectations for the movie itself. Whether it was good or bad, as long as Jia Hui was happy, it would be worth the more than 100 yuan he had just spent on the movie tickets. Well, there was also Coke, popcorn, potato chips. However, after only watching the beginning of the movie for a few minutes, Chi Zihao's interest in watching the movie was aroused, especially this theme song that was full of ancient charm. It touched his heartstrings and made him involuntarily put himself in the shoes of the protagonist. The road of life is like a long dream, the road is full of wind and frost, and the wind and frost blow against my face. There are many directions in the world of mortals, find the center of the dream, love follows the man, the road follows the man. Life is a dream and a passion, there are vague tears in the dream, where to go and where to find the direction in my heart, the wind seems to sigh softly in the dream, the road and the man are boundless. Looking at the wandering scholar on the screen and listening to the melodious melody of the theme song, Chi Zihao's mind was no longer on Jia Hui, who sat next to him. As for Jia Hui, she stared at the screen without blinking. Note, The Road Follows the Man, lyricist/composer, Huang Zhan. Chapter 555. How dare you? How dare you rob me of my money? In the wilderness, a torrential downpour poured down. 6 or 7 burly bandits were running for their lives. Although they held sharp weapons in their hands, they couldn't hide the fear on their faces. It was as if there was some kind of demon chasing after them. Accompanied by a thunderous roar, a black-clothed warrior rushed out from behind the bandits, brazenly killing his way into the fleeing crowd. However, a swift and fierce sword light flashed, and a head flew into the sky. The blood splashed on the face of the scholar who was scared out of his wits, leaving him dumbfounded. However, the massacre was still ongoing. The black-clothed warrior brandished his sword and charged left and right, but no one was a match for him at all. In their despair, 2 bandits tried to fight back with their lives, but they were cut down by the black-clothed warrior with a single slash. In the audience, Chi Zihao's blood was boiling. He had seen a lot of Hollywood blockbusters before, and the fights in them were fierce and bloody. However, compared with the 1-minute scene in A Chinese Ghost Story, they were too crude and simple. They were violent but not charming. Kill a man in 10 steps, leave no trace for 1,000 miles, and leave when the deed is done, hide yourself in your name. Chi Zihao couldn't help but think of the famous lines in Li Bai's Journey of the Gallant. The scene on the screen and the exciting soundtrack made the background of the chaotic world so vivid in his eyes. There were also a few exclamations from the audience around him. The movie had just started, and the scenes in Lanrua Temple and the straw hut in the wilderness had left a deep impression on everyone, making them look forward to the rest of the plot. In other words, the audience's appetite was whetted. On the screen, the story continued. The scholar Ning Kaichen went to Guobei County to collect debts, and Feng Yu was forced to stay in the legendary Lanrua Temple. However, he was refused by the Taoist priest Yan Qixia, so he sneaked into the temple. In the middle of the night, Ning Kaichen was attracted by the music and met Nia Shaoqian. However, Nia Shaoqian suddenly showed her killing intent, and Yan Qixia saved her. Touched by Ning Kaichen's honesty and kindness, Nia Shaoqian fell in love with him, but Yan Qixia stopped her. Ning Kaichen thought that Yan Qixia was a cruel murderer and wanted to escape with Nia Shaoqian. However, Nia Shaoqian was controlled by Grandma Tree and forced her to kill Ning Kaichen to absorb his yang energy. Shaoqian could not bear to see this happen, but Granny Tree Fairy flew into a rage and personally took action. Seeing that the two of them were in danger, it was Yan Qixia who acted out of righteousness and heavily injured Granny. At this moment, Ning Kaichen knows that Shaoqian is a wandering ghost. To be honest, the reason why Qi Zihao booked the movie tickets for A Chinese Ghost Story through his phone yesterday was entirely because Jihui liked the two main leads. He sat here to make his sweetheart happy. But now, Qi Zihao himself was fascinated by it. In the film, Ning Kaichen was a little pedantic and cowardly, but he still maintained a kind heart in the troubled world. For the sake of his loved ones, he showed extraordinary courage in the face of real danger. Qi Zihao saw his own shadow in him, and he naturally immersed himself in it. He followed the ups and downs of the protagonist in the film, and his mood rose and fell. He was fascinated and entranced. Until a low cry of surprise came from beside him. "Ah!" In the movie, the boss, Granny Tree Fairy, used powerful magic to fight fiercely with Yan Qixia. The scene was particularly horrifying, and the audience was shocked, including Jihui. Completely out of instinctive fear, she subconsciously grabbed Qi Zihao's hand. Qi Zihao was stunned for a moment before he came to his senses. Jihui's hand was a little cold, and her skin was soft and delicate. The feeling of touch made his face instantly turn red. God bless him, this was the first time in his life that Qi Zihao had such intimate contact with a girl other than his sister, and the other party was the person he liked. Great joy instantly rushed to Qi Zihao's head, causing him to be in a trance for a moment. He did not even have time to watch the exciting movie, and only hoped that time would stop at this moment forever. Unfortunately, only a few minutes later, Jihui came to her senses and quickly retracted her hand shyly. Qi Zihao's heart was indescribably disappointed. Fortunately, there was still a movie to watch. In the movie, Ning Kaichen knew that Nia Shaoqian was controlled by Granny Tree Fairy because her bones were abandoned in the mountains. She was forced to look for strong men every night for Granny Tree Fairy to absorb yang essence, so that Granny Tree Fairy could increase her lifespan. In order to prevent Shaoqian from being humiliated again, Ning Kaichen promised to transport her ashes back to the countryside for burial. Unexpectedly, Shaoqian was taken away by the Witch of Black Mountain as his wife. Ning Kaichen begged Yan Qixia to go with him to save Shaoqian. Yan Qixia tried hard to persuade Ning Kaichen, but to no avail. Finally, Yan Qixia took Ning Kaichen to the underworld and finally rescued Shaoqian, so that she could be reincarnated. But in this way, Ning Kaichen and Nia Shaoqian were separated forever. This was the end of the story. The ending was not a perfect reunion, leaving the audience infinite melancholy. With the appearance of the subtitles, the lights in the movie hall slowly lit up, and it was time to leave. But many audience members did not immediately get up, still immersed in the movie. Jihui wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and said to Qi Zihao, "Let's go." Qi Zihao suddenly had an idea, or it could be said that he was impulsive. Without thinking, he took Jihui's little hand and asked, "Jihui, this movie is very good. Let's watch it again. Jiahui did not expect that Chiziheo would be so bold to take her hand in public. Her round face was suddenly stained with a layer of red, and she subconsciously struggled. But her strength was very light. Hey, what are you doing? Nihue was still the shrewd one. She immediately slapped away Chiziheo's hand and said, "Don't take advantage of my sister." Chiziheo's courage disappeared in an instant. He hid his hand and said embarrassedly, then, he was very scared, afraid that Jiahui would hate him because of this. Let's watch it again. He was about to say, forget it, when Jiahui suddenly said, it is very good. Her voice fell in Chiziheo's ears like the sound of nature. He was so happy that he was about to explode. Okay, I'll go out and buy the movie tickets right now. Nihue snorted and took the opportunity to blackmail him, buy more snacks. I want spiced beef jerky and Haagen-Dazs ice cream, big ones. Chiziheo did not care at all. For tonight's date, he had taken out his savings from working. As long as Jiahui was happy. And the conversation between the two was heard by the other audience members who were leaving, and several couples also discussed to watch the movie again. It is very good. I also want to watch it again. Nie Xiaoqian is so beautiful. Let's go buy the tickets. Maybe there are no tickets left. Let's go. Chapter 556. When Chiziheo came out of the cinema with the two girls, it was already 11:00 at night. A Chinese ghost story was 90 minutes long, and it would take 3 hours to watch it again. Plus the interval in between, it was naturally very late after watching the second scene. Jia Hui began to worry. Oh, it's so late. My family must be worried. Nihue didn't care. What are you afraid of? They haven't called yet. It's not too late now. Chiziheo said considerately, I'll send you home now. We'll take a taxi. When they came, the three of them took the subway. It was cheap, but it was definitely not as convenient as a taxi. Chiziheo finally became courageous at night. He knew that he must not be stingy to please girls. He used the holidays to make money. Wasn't it for this moment? Jia Hui hesitated. That's too expensive. At night, Chiziheo treated her and Nihue to 2 episodes of A Chinese Ghost Story. He even bought a lot of snacks to stuff into Nihue's mouth. There were definitely at least 300 to 400 yuan. Chiziheo, like her, was obviously not a child of a rich family. Taxis in Xiangjiang were not cheap. Before she finished speaking, her sister Nihue pulled her and ran forward. Don't be long-winded. We'll take a taxi. Jia Hui was dragged away by Nihue, and Chiziheo hurriedly followed behind them. But when he passed by the peripheral product store at the entrance of the cinema, his footsteps involuntarily slowed down. The small shop near the movie theater was doing well. There were a lot of people crowded inside, most of them couples. And the place where they gathered was a large promotional poster of A Chinese Ghost Story. Obviously, everyone was buying the peripheral products of A Chinese Ghost Story. Chiziheo was a little surprised. He didn't notice it when he first came. He didn't expect that this ghost movie would have peripheral products for sale. Generally speaking, the peripheral products sold in Xiangjiang cinemas were basically from Hollywood blockbusters, especially comic book heroes. Ah, look at this Ning Kaichen doll. It's so cute. I want to buy it. Boss, I want this set of figurines. I like Yan Qixia. This sword is so handsome. How much is it? I want Nia Xiaoqian. The voices of the customers in the store made Chiziheo's footsteps to the door become hesitant. Just as he walked to the door, he stopped, touched his pocket, and showed a struggling look on his face. After a while, Chiziheo clenched his teeth, turned around, and rushed toward the store. When he ran out of the cinema, the two girls had been waiting outside for 4 or 5 minutes. Jia Hui was not angry or dissatisfied, but Nihue shouted, "Did you fall into a latrine pit? We've been waiting for such a long time that even our family has called us." They thought that Chiziheo had gone to the toilet. Chiziheo did not dare to provoke Nihue. He quickly walked up to Jia Hui and handed her the items he had just bought. "Hui, this is for you." What he gave Jia Hui was a limited edition doll set of a Chinese ghost story. There were a total of 4 dolls in the set, namely Ning Kaichen, Nia Xiaoqian, Yan Qixia, and Granny Treyant. This set of dolls was very exquisitely made. The clothes, accessories, and hair were all custom-made according to the stills. The characters were lifelike, and there was even a hint of cuteness in them. They looked very beautiful in the wooden box. Of course, the precondition for beauty was the price. A set cost 388 yuan without any discount. Chiziheo grabbed the last set. Ah! Jia Hui did not expect that Chiziheo had just gone to buy a movie doll for her. She was stunned. She blushed again and quickly waved her hand. "This is too expensive. I can't take it." Nihue's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, she grabbed it and said, "Sister, if you don't want it, it's mine." Jia Hui was embarrassed and anxious. Nihue. She actually liked this set of dolls very much, but she did not want Chiziheo to spend so much money. She was very conflicted. Chiziheo scratched his head and said, "Let's go." Chiziheo stopped a taxi on the side of the road and sent the two sisters downstairs. "Goodbye, Hui." Jia Hui, who had not spoken along the way, nodded and pulled Nihue up the stairs. Chiziheo watched the two figures disappear at the top of the stairs, feeling lost. He stood quietly in the same place for a moment, then turned around and was ready to leave. His own house was nearby, so he let the taxi go first just now to avoid spending more money. The date at night cost a lot of money that Chiziheo had saved from working. But he did not feel the slightest bit of heartache. Chiziheo had just taken a few steps when he suddenly heard a familiar call behind him. He turned his head in shock and saw that Jia Hui, who had just gone upstairs, had run down again and ran to him. "Thank you." After saying thank you, Jia Hui tiptoed and kissed Chiziheo's face like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. Then, she ran away like a frightened rabbit and disappeared back up the stairs in the blink of an eye. Chiziheo seemed to have been petrified. After a long time, he was awakened by the cold wind blowing through the long street. He raised his head in disbelief and touched the place on his face where Jia Hui had kissed. He giggled. Booking 2 tickets for A Chinese Ghost Story was undoubtedly the most correct and luckiest thing he had done. On February 21st, A Chinese Ghost Story was officially released in various cinemas in Xiangjiang and earned 3.28 million yuan on the first day with 18.75% screening. The box office of The Painted Skin on that day was 5.9 million, nearly twice that of A Chinese Ghost Story. Judging from the box office data, The Painted Skin, which had been released for a week, had completely crushed A Chinese Ghost Story. The latter seemed to be unable to pose a threat to the former's market position at all. However, many people in the industry learned a piece of news at the same time, a piece of news that surprised them. That was, the peripheral products of A Chinese Ghost Story had sold 2.65 million yuan on the same day. With the box office, it was 5.93 million yuan, surpassing The Painted Skin by 30,000 yuan. The Painted Skin also had peripheral products, but they were very few. There were only a few sets of posters, and the sales were negligible. This was inconceivable. After all, when people found out that Lu Chin's studio had spent money to order a large number of a Chinese ghost story peripherals, many people in the industry talked about it as a joke. They felt that Lu Chin did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Movie peripherals were the patent of Hollywood blockbusters. A China-Hong Kong co-production with a mere investment of 20 to 30 million actually produced a large number of peripherals. That was equivalent to throwing money into the water and waiting to be left in the warehouse to collect dust. However, the reality was not as these people had imagined. A Chinese ghost story actually exceeded 2 million yuan on the first day. If there was nothing fishy about it, then that meant that this movie had great potential. Chapter 557. Movie peripherals refer to products developed according to the characters, scenes, props, logos, etc., including toys, clothing, accessories, audio and video, books, daily necessities, etc., mainly relying on the popularity and influence brought by the movie's release. In Hollywood, movie peripherals have long formed a huge and mature industry. Many movies may only earn back the cost at the box office, but relying on the sales of peripherals, they still make a lot of money. According to the 2016 statistics of the Motion Picture Association of America, peripherals contributed more than 30% to the Hollywood film industry. 2/3 of the income of many movies came from the sales of peripherals. This was undoubtedly an extremely tempting big cake. However, it was very difficult to eat the cake. China and Xinjiang had also started the development of movie peripherals very early, but the results were completely unsatisfactory. 2 years ago, Baodalong Pictures, a big shot in the Xinjiang film industry, invested 170 million to shoot the Hong Kong adaptation of Superhero, with the intention of replicating the Hollywood model, making a big fist in the field of peripherals, and creating a big IP of Hong Kong comic heroes. It could be said to be ambitious. However, this Hong Kong blockbuster, with a total investment of more than 200 million plus the publicity costs, only earned 68 million in Hong Kong in the end. Including the domestic box office, it barely reached 300 million, a huge loss. At that time, Baodalong Pictures also spent 12 million on the peripherals of Superhero, ordering a large number of puppet figurines, prop models, accessories, daily necessities, etc. In the end, the total sales in Xinjiang and the mainland was only 5.1 million. It should be known that the profit of movie peripherals was very high. The cost of a set of puppet figurines was 100, and the sales price was at least 300 or 400. Compared with the investment cost of 12 million, the 5.1 million sales was a huge loss. Superhero also borrowed the fame of the original comic to sell some peripherals, otherwise the loss would be even greater. In the end, Baodalong Pictures was forced to destroy a large number of backlog of finished products, becoming a joke in the industry. In fact, if it wasn't for Baodalong Pictures' overconfidence that led to a wrong prediction, the 5.1 million peripheral sales would still be possible, because most of the mainland and Xinjiang movies did not have any peripherals, and what they had were just cheap posters and the like. The example of Superhero also made people in the industry flinch from peripheral products. They watched Hollywood blockbusters eat meat, and it became the most common phenomenon to be envious but not to do anything. Therefore, when everyone learned that a Chinese ghost story had sold 65 million yuan on the first day of its release, their first feeling was disbelief. They could not believe it at all. A Chinese ghost story was not a drama adapted from a popular manga, so it lacked a fan base. Although everyone was familiar with strange tales from a Chinese studio, this was a supernatural film, so it was not suitable for the genre. However, it was even more impossible to falsify the sales. First of all, Lu Chin Studio and Jiayang Pictures did not have the ability to make the cinemas in Hong Kong cooperate with them to fabricate the sales figures. Second, it was completely unnecessary. This was because the sales of peripherals were not about buying ticket sales. Wouldn't spending money on their own peripherals be idiots? Therefore, when the news was confirmed to be true, everyone's second reaction was disbelief. It was unbelievable. But regardless of whether they believed it or not, the industry professionals' evaluation of A Chinese Ghost Story suddenly increased by a large margin. This movie was trending to be very popular. It was very simple. If the audience didn't like the movie to a certain extent, why would they be willing to spend money to buy peripheral products that were more expensive than the movie tickets? It had sold 65 million yuan on the first day. How much could it sell in the 4-week release period? If Hong Kong could sell so much, how much could it sell in mainland China, which was Lu Chen's home ground? No one could make an accurate estimate. It was embarrassing to say more or less. Everyone had to admire Lu Chen. To sell so many peripherals, he had to first lay out so many goods and stock up. Lu Chen dared to spend money on peripherals that were regarded as forbidden areas by countless of his peers. Whether it was courage or confidence, they were undoubtedly very strong. And he had a high chance of winning the bet. This made more people turn their attention to A Chinese Ghost Story. Those in the industry who had been watching coldly from the sidelines or disdainful of the film had changed their minds. Many people even got someone to book tickets for A Chinese Ghost Story. No matter how much the advertisements in newspapers and websites were exaggerated, it was better to see it with one's own eyes. There are not many people I, Shou-yi, truly admire in my life. Seeing Lu Chen, Shou-yi said with great emotion, "Young Master Lu, you are definitely one of them." As soon as he got the first-day box office and peripheral sales data of A Chinese Ghost Story, the behind-the-scenes boss of Jiayang Pictures could not sit still and personally went to the studio to look for Lu Chen. Shou-yi was not a boring person, and in fact, Jiayang Pictures was not the most important business under his name. However, this heavy sales data made him unable to remain calm. More than 2 million in sales of peripheral products. Thanks to policy factors, after the movies made by Hong Kong film companies were released in Hong Kong, they received a much higher share than their counterparts in the mainland, almost 50%. In other words, with a box office of 1 million yuan, the film company could get 500,000 yuan or more. This was one of the important reasons why so many film companies could survive even though the local market of Hong Kong was small. However, a 50% or 60% share of the box office was nothing compared to the profits of peripheral products. As a rather successful businessman, Shou-yi was well versed in the ways of this. What made Shou-yi feel ashamed was that when Lu Chen decided to invest a large amount of money in customizing the peripheral products of A Chinese Ghost Story, he was against it. He could learn from the mistakes of a superhero. However, Lu Chen was stubborn and would rather invest all of his money than give up. In the end, Shou-yi reluctantly agreed to Lu Chen's peripheral development plan out of consideration for maintaining the relationship between the two parties. He still had a knot in his heart. Now that he thought about it, if he had missed it at that time, he would probably regret it till his intestines turned green. "Boss Shou, you flatter me," Lu Chen smiled and invited Shou-yi to sit down for a chat. He asked his assistant, Li Zhen, to pour tea for the guests. Even if Shou-yi did not come, he was prepared to talk to him. Shou-yi said solemnly, "First of all, I came here to apologize to young Master Lu. As a partner, Jiayang Pictures has not done its best in the past. Please forgive me." As he spoke, he actually stood up and bowed to Lu Chen to apologize. Lu Chen quickly stood up and said, "Boss Shou, you're too kind. There's no need to do this. There's really no need." Speaking of which, in the early days of cooperation, especially when faced with the threat from the Jiang family, Jiayang Pictures' indecisive performance made Lu Chen very dissatisfied. However, it was still very good later on. Without the strong support and cooperation of Jiayang Pictures, A Chinese Ghost Story would not have been released so smoothly. Chapter 558. Lu Qin still clearly remembered Qin Wenxiang's evaluation of Zhou Yi. Zhou Yi was a real businessman. A real businessman knew how to judge the situation. When faced with a choice, he would always choose the one that was most beneficial to him. If he needed to put down his pride, he would never put on airs. A real businessman could not be a real friend. Lu Qin would not treat Zhou Yi as a friend, but as a business partner. It would be fine. So after the two sides reached a consensus, he got down to business. The number of screenings for our new film is too low. I hope Boss Show can put more effort in this area. The number of screenings for A Chinese Ghost Story on the first day was less than 20%. It was not too bad, but it did not meet Lu Chen's expectations. It was the task of Jiayang Pictures to communicate with the cinemas in Hong Kong. Lu Chen's studio had just established itself in Hong Kong. It needed to expand its channels in all aspects. It lacked connections and resources in the industry, so it needed a partner like Jiayang Pictures. Zhou Yi smiled and said, "Don't worry, young Master Lu. I believe that no cinema can ignore our results. I have already sent someone to discuss with Wanli and Diqing. I believe it will not be a problem to increase the number of screenings." Wanli and Diqing were the two major cinema chains in Hong Kong. They jointly owned more than 60% of the cinemas in Hong Kong and played an important role in Hong Kong's film industry. The famous Oriental Hollywood Theatre was a big cinema under Wanli Cinema. Zhou Yi said confidently, "Our number of screenings is not high now, mainly because The Painted Skin bought a share of the box office. But if Hagwon and Star Art can buy a week's box office, they can't buy a month's." Buying the box office was an unspoken rule in the industry. The rich and powerful often played it, but there must be a limit. The scale of Hong Kong's film market was small. Spending a few million could occupy a considerable share of screenings. But unless one was extremely willful, no one would throw money desperately into the water. In order to support The Painted Skin, Hagwon and Star Art bought the box office for 4 days in a row. In Zhou Yi's view, they were basically close to their limit. On the other hand, if this kind of cheating exceeded the limit, it would also attract public anger in the industry. If it went too far, no one would be willing to play. Therefore, Zhou Yi was very certain that the high box office earnings of The Painted Skin would not last long. Once its true colors were revealed, it would be the day of A Chinese Ghost Story's strong counterattack. The cinema chains were not fools. They knew very well what was going on, so it was reasonable for them to increase the number of screenings for A Chinese Ghost Story in advance. Most importantly, the surprising peripheral sales of A Chinese Ghost Story were undoubtedly equivalent to stimulants. It was enough to stimulate the sensitive nerves of the cinema chains and make them make a wise choice. The truth was not unexpected. On February 22, the number of screenings for A Chinese Ghost Story in Hong Kong increased to 22.67%. Many of the screenings were added on that day, and the box office exceeded the 4 million mark. The box office sales continued to rise amidst the exclamations of the industry, reaching 3.58 million. At the same time, Painted Skin, which had been holding on for a few days, finally showed its true signs of decline. On the 22nd, the box office earnings were only 3.1 million, completely behind A Chinese Ghost Story. This was more or less out of the expectations of the industry. Everyone had thought that in order to suppress A Chinese Ghost Story, The Painted Skin would continue to buy the box office for a few more days. They did not expect it to admit defeat so quickly. Then, insider news came out. It was said that because the real box office results were too bad, there was a serious disagreement between Huaguan Pictures and Star Art Entertainment. Not to mention continuing to buy the box office, even publicity was facing problems. In just 2 days, A Chinese Ghost Story had completed a beautiful counterattack and was showing signs of soaring. On the internet, a large number of netizens' comments about a Chinese ghost story emerged, including many articles by film critics. Wang Dong was one of them. As an independent film critic, Wang Dong had a habit of writing film reviews. He would not publish his own film reviews before the official release of the movie, even if he had watched the premiere in advance. A Chinese Ghost Story was no exception. After Wang Dong was invited to attend the premiere of A Chinese Ghost Story, he wrote a film review article, but it was not until 2 days after the official release of the movie that he published it on his blog. When I first watched A Chinese Ghost Story, I thought that it was a fantasy ghost movie similar to Painted Skin. I even mocked the filmmakers of today for not having any creativity. They changed the story in Strange Tales from a Chinese studio, added some celebrities' faces and special effects, and then brought it to the table to fool the audience. It was really boring. However, after watching the movie, I realized that although they were both based on Strange Tales from a Chinese studio, A Chinese Ghost Story and Painted Skin were works of completely different levels. The two could not be compared at all. A Chinese Ghost Story is so much better than Painted Skin. Dressed in a coarse green robe, a shabby little hat, and a pair of worn cloth shoes, this was the image that the protagonist, Ning Kaichin, gave to everyone. Life was full of misfortunes. He had a youthful talent, but there was no place for him to use it. As a result, he was ridiculed by the peddlers who sold paintings as having high taste but low status. But even so, he did not lose the loveliness that was in his bones. He was naive, pedantic, but also affectionate, positive, and optimistic. He was born at the wrong time, but he did not feel depressed at all. As for Nie Xiaoqian, she was a ghost who died in a foreign land. She was a female ghost who lived in a barren mountain and specialized in sucking the essence of young men. But this was not her intention. Every time she heard a passerby, her heart would be tortured by endless self-blame and grief. She was beautiful and kind. Although she was forced by the despotic power of the tree fairy, and although all the demons and ghosts around her were bloodthirsty, she still held on to her conscience alone. She was unique in that dirty and dark world. The meeting of the male and female protagonists was an accident, but it was also fate. A poignant love story connected the whole movie. Even if the ending was not perfect, it was still very touching. The plot of the whole movie was compact, the story was exciting, and the soundtrack and theme song were first class. There was another character in the movie that left a deep impression, and that was Yan Qixia. He was a little crazy and a little drunk. He was heroic and slayed demons. His laughter and curses were almost humorous, showing us the profound skills of an experienced actor. I dare to say that A Chinese Ghost Story will become a classic among ghost movies. Wang Dong's long review blog post was more than 2,000 words long. It was the longest film review he had ever written. It could be said that it was full of praises. The whole post was full of praises, making people wonder if he had received some benefits from the film producer. However, anyone who had seen A Chinese Ghost Story would not have such doubts. Chapter 559. In today's era of material desires, Wang Dong was undoubtedly a rather unusual existence. He wrote articles and film reviews and only spoke according to his own wishes instead of being driven by profits. Such people were rare, so Wang Dong was respected by many people. He had his own influence in the Hong Kong literary and film circles. His blog articles and reposts had always been very high. Wang Dong had written a lot of film review articles, mainly focusing on the movies produced in Xinjiang. Due to the fact that Xinjiang's movies had gone from prosperity to decline in the past 10 years, he criticized more and praised less, leaving a strict impression on others. Therefore, when Wang Dong's long film review article praising A Chinese Ghost Story was released, it inevitably caused a small sensation both inside and outside the circle. Even those who did not usually watch movies were interested in this film. Was it really that good? Some people were amazed, some were curious, and some were skeptical. However, on Hong Kong blogs, there were many people who supported Wang Dong's views. They were all Hong Kong netizens who had watched the film. A Chinese Ghost Story is a good film. I strongly recommend it. It's been a long time since I've seen such a sincere ghost film. The characters and plot are first class. At least 9 points. The special effects are also good. Although there are not many scenes, it's very exciting. I like Yan Qixia very much. I took my girlfriend to watch it tonight. The 70 yuan was well spent. Then, when she came out, she saw the peripherals and insisted on buying a set. She spent another few hundred yuan. Her wallet is crying. Compared to a Chinese ghost story, the painted skin is simply trash. In the era of the internet, everyone was a netizen. Freedom of speech had reached an unprecedented level. Anyone could speak freely and express their opinions after registering an account on a blog forum. The same was true for film reviews. In the past, ordinary people could only watch film critics express their opinions on newspapers or television. Now, they could participate in it themselves. Everyone could be a film critic. Although the comments of ordinary netizens could not compare to Wang Dong's film review article in terms of content and depth of thought, their feelings were the most intuitive and real, and their influence was more extensive. The praise for A Chinese Ghost Story spread from Hong Kong blogs to Hong Kong forums, especially in the film and television section, where it became a hot topic. Unlike the fake reviewers who were paid to post, the commenters of A Chinese Ghost Story were mostly experienced IDs. Their posts were more meaningful and credible. It was very rare to see such a one-sided wave of praise in the Hong Kong forum film and television section. Even if there were critics of A Chinese Ghost Story, most of them would use the words, "The flaws do not obscure the brilliance." They felt that the movie's flaws could not cover up its strengths, and that it was worth recommending. Many people believe that this was one of the best Hong Kong films in the past decade. The story, background, special effects, and soundtrack all had strong local characteristics. These praises and recommendations from the internet affected many ordinary netizens. Naturally, it played a good role in promoting the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story. The power of reputation was powerful. On the 23rd of February, the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story reached 5.77 million yuan, rising for 2 consecutive days. Furthermore, the number of online ticket bookings increased greatly. On the 24th, most of the primetime tickets in the cinemas were fully booked. Under such circumstances, coupled with the full public relations of Jiayang Pictures, by the 24th, the number of screenings of A Chinese Ghost Story soared to 35%, showing a blowout trend. The market was very sensitive, and the market was very realistic. Whether it was a large cinema chain or a small or medium-sized cinema, they were naturally willing to leave their precious audience seats to those popular films, regardless of what kind of film it was. Not only did A Chinese Ghost Story have excellent box office sales, but it also had a good reputation. It was also a Hong Kong co-production, and the peripheral products were also very popular. In the eyes of the cinemas, it was like a hen that laid golden eggs. In the past, the shops and the cinemas sold Hollywood blockbusters. Although they sold very well, the cost of these peripherals was very high, and the profit left for the cinemas and cinemas was low. In contrast, the peripheral products of A Chinese Ghost Story gave the cinemas a much higher share. No one would say that money was too hot. Therefore, there was no need for Lu Chin Studio to communicate with Jiayang Pictures. Many cinemas took the initiative to place the peripheral products of A Chinese Ghost Story in the most conspicuous position, and also put up large advertisements so that the audience would not ignore it. On the 24th of February, the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story continued to rise with the increase in the number of screenings, reaching 7.77 24 million, completely crushing other films that were released at the same time, including a Hollywood blockbuster that had been released for 3 weeks. A Chinese Ghost Story was popular, and it was going to be very popular. Even those who had prejudices could only remain silent and could not criticize it. This film did not even buy a single yuan in the box office. As for The Painted Skin, which had a vigorous publicity campaign and had bought a lot of box office tickets, under a lot of bad reviews, the box office fell below 1 million on the 23rd, and only 580,000 on the 24th. It was simply terrible. Moreover, the screening rate of The Painted Skin had dropped to less than 10%. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that the producers of The Painted Skin, Huaguan Pictures, and Star Art Entertainment, had already given up. They had invested too much in the early stages of the film, and the high box office that came from the high cost was just a flash in the pan. If they continued to hold on, it would be equivalent to throwing money into a bottomless pit. Therefore, as long as the leaders of the two companies were not too stupid, they should make a wise decision. The Painted Skin had already suffered a huge loss in the Hong Kong market, and there was no way to turn it around. Moving to the mainland market was the only choice. According to the judgment of the industry, The Painted Skin was very likely to be removed from the Xiangjiang cinema chain in advance. In late February 2017, the fiasco of The Painted Skin, which had invested more than 100 million yuan, became one of the reasons why A Chinese Ghost Story soared to the sky, sweeping the market unstoppably. On Monday, the 27th of February, the official blog of A Chinese Ghost Story in Hong Kong announced that the film had accumulated a box office of 45 million in 6 days, becoming the well-deserved box office champion. It had also greatly broken the previous record set by The Painted Skin. In addition to the extremely beautiful box office, A Chinese Ghost Story also sold another 24 million yuan of peripheral products. The former was fine, but the latter was simply blinding the eyes of the people in the industry. This kind of peripheral sales was completely not inferior to many Hollywood blockbusters. How much was the investment for A Chinese Ghost Story? It was only 30 million yuan. After a week of screening, it would almost recover its cost. After that, it would all be profitable, and there was an even larger mainland market. Therefore, many Xiangjiang film companies were envious and planned to follow the trend to make a profit. Chapter 560. Uncle Ma. As Ma Rongjin walked down the stairs, a middle-aged man who happened to pass by greeted him warmly. "Where are you going? Have you had dinner?" Ma Rongjin nodded and said, "There's a party tonight. I'm going now. It must be in a high-end hotel." The middle-aged man said in an exaggerated tone, "You are a big star now. You won't be staying here for long, right? You will definitely stay in a hotel every day in the future. Grandma will be blessed." Ma Rongjin smiled faintly and did not respond to the man's words. The man was his neighbor, and they did not have much contact. At most, they would just nod at each other, and Ma Rongjin knew that this man secretly despised him, the old him. Ever since Ma Rongjin's A Chinese Ghost Story was released in Hong Kong and sold well at the box office, as the actor of Yan Qixia, an important character in the film, his fame and popularity had suddenly increased. There were interviews from reporters, people who called him to make movies, and people who wanted to be his agent. Ma Rongjin's rented house in Tian Shui suddenly became crowded, and then the neighbors, whether they knew him or not, greeted him warmly with a smile. There were many neighbors who knew Ma Rongjin in the past, but few of them were so friendly and enthusiastic. Usually, when people talked about him, they said that his wife cheated on him, his career was ruined, and he could only be laughed at. Now that he had turned over a new leaf, everything had become different. The fickleness of human nature and the fickleness of the world were nothing more than this. After experiencing prosperity, vanity, and wandering, Ma Rongjin had long been indifferent, and he did not let it get to his head. After a few polite words, he turned around and was ready to leave. Tonight, Lu Chen's studio and Jiayang Pictures would hold a celebration party at the Shangri-La Hotel to celebrate the box office of A Chinese Ghost Story, breaking 50 million, and Ma Rongjin would definitely attend. Just then, a black Mercedes-Benz steadily stopped beside him. Ma Rongjin could not help but be surprised. Tian Shui, where he rented, was the civilian area of Hong Kong. The urban construction and environment could not be compared with the prosperous commercial area at all. There were privately built houses everywhere, and the narrow streets were filled with sewage and garbage. A luxury Mercedes-Benz worth millions appearing here was like winning the lottery. The next moment, the window of the back seat of the Mercedes-Benz rolled down, and a fat head popped out. Brother Ma. Ma Rongjin was stunned. She took a closer look and recognized the man. Boss Gao. Ma Rongjin had been in the industry for decades. Back then, he had also been famous. He knew many people in and out of the industry. Although he did not have much contact with them after he died, he did not lose his memory. This Gao Hongda was the boss of Gaoxing Pictures, which had now been renamed as Gaoxing Entertainment. He was quite a figure in the film and television entertainment industry, and his character was smooth and shrewd. Ma Rongjin had acted in a movie produced by Gaoxing Pictures in the past, and the box office was not bad. Because of that, he became friends with Gao Hongda. However, when he was down and out, he wanted to ask Gao Hongda for help, but he was rejected by the other party. Now that she saw Gao Hongda again, Ma Rongjin couldn't help but recall her past and became a little absent-minded. Gao Hongda opened the car door and got out. He patted Ma Rongjin's shoulder with a smile and said in the tone of an old friend, "We haven't seen each other for more than 10 years, right? I can't believe you still remember me." Ma Rongjin was awakened by Gao Hongda's pat. She smiled faintly and said, "It has been 10 years. He was really very emotional in his heart. If it was a narrow-minded person who had experienced the same experience as Ma Rongjin, he would definitely not have a good face to Gao Hongda. Maybe he would have ridiculed a few words to vent the resentment of being rejected. But Ma Rongjin had no prejudice against Gao Hongda. At that time, there were many people who rejected him, and most of the reason was because of him. Time was also fate, and he couldn't blame others. Of course, Ma Rongjin wouldn't treat Gao Hongda as a friend. He was just curious about the other party's intention. "Boss Gao, what can I do for you?" Gao Hongda said, "Are you going to Shangri-La to participate in the victory party tonight? I can give you a ride on the way. How about we have a chat? On the way." Ma Rongjin didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he didn't refuse. "Then I'll have to trouble you, Boss Gao." In fact, he had already guessed Gao Hongda's intention. The two got in the car together. The Mercedes-Benz started again and slowly drove out of the narrow alley. The middle-aged neighbor looked at the luxury car in the distance with great envy and spat on the ground. Who would have thought that Ma Rongjin, who was so miserable that he couldn't afford to eat meat, had turned his life around? In the car, Gao Hongda looked out through the window and said, "Brother Ma, you've been wronged all these years. Now you've finally seen the light. Why do you still live here?" Ma Rongjin smiled and didn't say anything. Seeing that Ma Rongjin didn't fall for the trap, Gao Hongda said straightforwardly, "Brother Ma, Lu Chen's studio doesn't pay you well, does it? I have a movie that's about to start shooting. How about you help me? We can talk about the pay." Sure enough, it was as expected. Ma Rongjin wasn't surprised at all. Gao Hongda wasn't the first to ask him to shoot a movie. The popularity of A Chinese Ghost Story made him, an old salted fish, completely change his life, and all kinds of invitations came one after another. After thinking about it, Ma Rongjin said sincerely, "Boss Gao, I can't answer you for the time being. Why don't we make an appointment to talk about it?" This was Ma Rongjin's tactfulness and sophistication. He didn't care about the grudges of the past, and he wouldn't sell himself out with a few words. It was best to let the agent talk about the pay and other things. A brilliant agent could guarantee the interests of the artists to the greatest extent. Although Ma Rongjin didn't have an agent now, with his current reputation, it wasn't difficult to find a reliable one. Another reason why Ma Rongjin didn't want to agree rashly was that he didn't know if Lu Qin needed him. If Lu Qin had a new movie for him to shoot, he would be willing to do it even if he didn't have a penny. It was because he was used to the fickleness of the world that he understood how difficult it was to help in times of need. Gao Hongda also didn't expect to settle Ma Rongjin with a few words. However, since the latter didn't refuse on the spot, it meant that there was a possibility of cooperation. It was just a matter of how much the price was. As long as it was worth the price, Boss Gao wasn't afraid of spending money. He smiled and agreed, no problem. The two of them chatted and laughed, talking about interesting anecdotes in the circle, as if they were old friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. The Mercedes-Benz drove out of the alley and entered the main road, then immediately merged into the rolling traffic. Hong Kong was shrouded in the night, and the lights were blurred. Chapter 561. Under the same night sky, some people were happy, while others were sad. Although it was already past 7:00 in the evening, there were still many employees working overtime in the Xiangjiang branch of Huaguan Pictures in Shanghuan. The office area was shrouded in an invisible, depressing atmosphere. Everyone was cautious, and even the strength of their typing became much softer, as if hitting the key points would bring disaster. This kind of low pressure lasted in the company for a few days. However, a week ago, the situation was completely different. The box office of Painted Skin, produced by Huaguan Pictures and Star Art Entertainment, crushed its competitors. It could be said that it was incomparably glorious, and they held a celebration party early. At that time, the atmosphere in the office was very relaxed, and everyone was full of energy. The common goal was to make the box office of Painted Skin break the 100 million mark in Hong Kong, and then pursue the victory to the mainland. But who would have thought that in just a few days, the situation would take a turn for the worse? The box office of Painted Skin dropped so much that it made people vomit blood, and the market reputation was terrible. Not to mention breaking 100 million, even breaking 50 million was already an extravagant hope. Such a situation of ups and downs really made people at a loss. Many employees even became confused because of this. They didn't know how long they could work in this job. Would Huaguan Pictures, which had suffered a crushing defeat, withdraw from Hong Kong? In fact, the same question was being asked to Cui Xingxian, the head of Huaguan Pictures. Huaguan Pictures was one of the first mainland film companies to enter Hong Kong after the new film policy was introduced in Hong Kong. At that time, Cui Xingxian was ambitious, and together with Star Art Entertainment, they set up a project to shoot Painted Skin in the shortest time possible, intending to cut the biggest piece of this extremely tempting cake. Painted Skin invested more than 100 million. And Cui Xingxian's goal was to win 1 billion in the global box office, which was the first shot of Huaguan Pictures south to Hong Kong. But the first step of his ambitious plan was hit hard. On the surface, the box office of Painted Skin was already quite good, and it once broke the weekly box office record of Hong Kong co-produced, films in Hong Kong. But outsiders might not know, but Cui Xingxian himself knew very well that behind the box office of Painted Skin, there was a huge investment in advertising and a lot of marketing expenses. Calculating the cost, Hong Kong's box office share was not enough to make up for the investment in advertising and marketing, not to mention the cost of shooting and production. It was a total loss. Huaguan Pictures was a big company, and they could afford to lose tens of millions of yuan. However, their partner, Star Art Entertainment, couldn't take it. The two parties had serious disagreements on the follow-up publicity of the movie, and they almost broke up. Cui Xingxian recalled how mean and stingy the general manager of Star Art Entertainment had been during their last meeting. He was so angry that he wanted to smash the ashtray on the table into the general manager's face. It was a fatal blow. When Cui Xingxian first came to Xiangjiang, he met a master at a gathering of his friends. The master told him that recently, there was an evil spirit in his life, and if he offended it, he would definitely hide it. At that time, Cui Xingxian dismissed it with a laugh. Only now did he realize that this master was truly capable. His Shah was undoubtedly Lu Qin. When he thought of Lu Qin again, Cui Xingxian gnashed his teeth in hatred. This brat who had suddenly popped out of nowhere had not only snatched away the beautiful woman he had once pursued, but had also become a stumbling block in the development of Huaguan Pictures. He had caused him to suffer a huge setback. However, Cui Xingxian could not do anything to Lu Qin. Lu Qin had the support of the Li family, and Cui Xingxian could not afford to offend him. His plot failed, and he fought head-on, and the result was that he was utterly defeated. Lu Qin was simply his nemesis. Sitting in the office, Cui Xingxian became more and more annoyed the more he thought about it. He could not help but pull off his tie to let his breathing become smoother. Then, he habitually held the mouse and opened the Hong Kong news website. As soon as he opened the website, a news pop-up window instantly popped up. A Chinese ghost story's box office broke 500 million, and stars gathered at Shangri-La Hotel to celebrate. F***CK. Cui Xingxian finally lost control of his emotions. He grabbed the mouse and smashed it against the wall. Bang! Accompanied by a crisp sound, the expensive Bluetooth mouse broke into pieces on the spot, and died. The secretary sitting in the outer room across the wall was shocked. She secretly turned her head to look at the closed office door, and her heart was extremely conflicted. Should she go in and ask? Recently, the boss's temper was getting worse, and she was worried that she would become a tool to vent his anger. Cui Xingxian, who had smashed the mouse, finally calmed down a little. He pressed the internal contact button on the phone and asked the secretary to find him a new mouse. He gritted his teeth and secretly swore. Lu Qin, I'll let you be happy this time, we'll see. Unlike in Hong Kong, Huaguan Pictures' home ground was still in China, and the painted skin had not lost yet. Cui Xingxian's resentment was so strong that even Lu Qin, who was in the banquet hall of Shangri-La Hotel, felt a chill. What's wrong? Chen Fei, who was beside Lu Qin, saw him shiver and asked with concern, "Did you catch a cold?" Lu Qin rubbed his nose and smiled. "No, I suddenly felt a little cold." "Still cold?" Chen Fei looked around and said with a smile, "It's already lively enough tonight." A Chinese ghost story had been released for 7 days, and the box office had exceeded 50 million yuan. It was a matter of course to hold a celebration party. This time, under the strong request of Jiayang Pictures, it was especially grand. In Hong Kong, it was a tradition to hold a celebration party for a movie's success. It was also a kind of publicity, or more accurately, a means of showing off. Therefore, the organizers had to invite all kinds of media and guests from all walks of life to come. In this world, there were very few people who would offer timely help, but there were countless people who would add flowers to the brocade. Lu Qin Studio and Jiayang Pictures sent out invitations. Those who received the invitation, unless they really could not come, would attend in person or send someone to attend. Lu Qin's friends in the Xiangjiang entertainment circle all came to support. Lu Gengxing could not attend because he was performing in the mainland, but he specially called to congratulate Lu Qin. Therefore, there were many guests in the large banquet hall of Shangri-La Hotel, and well-dressed gentlemen and ladies gathered in groups, making it a real place for fame and fortune. And as the protagonists of this celebration banquet, Lu Qin and Chen Fei undoubtedly got too much attention. The two were the focus of attention wherever they were. There were countless people who came over to chat with each other whether they knew each other or not. Lu Qin actually did not like this kind of social interaction very much, but if Lu Qin's studio wanted to develop and grow in Hong Kong, it was very necessary to expand the network of people in the circle. This was probably the so-called, in the pugilistic world, people can't help themselves. Of course, many people would envy this kind of can't help themselves, which they pursued but could not get. Chapter 562. The lively and noisy celebration did not end until 11 p.m., and hundreds of bottles of champagne had been opened. The bustling atmosphere dispersed, but the crew members of A Chinese Ghost Story stayed behind. That was because there was still one last procedure that had not been completed, and that was to give out red packets. Lu Qin and Qin Fei were together. The latter carried a heavy bag and then sent red packets that had already been sealed to every crew member, including the director, assistant director, stage manager, cameraman, lighting technician, art designer. Of course, the most important actors were also there. When the filming of A Chinese Ghost Story encountered difficulties, the crew members were in turmoil. Some members chose to leave because they were afraid of trouble, but most people still persisted. Lu Qin promised them that after A Chinese Ghost Story was released, he would give 10% of the Hong Kong box office to all the crew members to thank them for their unrelenting support and hard work. Although there was still a long time before A Chinese Ghost Story would be released in Hong Kong, Lu Qin had a good reason to use this celebration to distribute a portion of the rewards to everyone in advance. Thank you, young Master Lu. Thank you, boss. Thank you, Lady Boss. The crew members who received the red packets were all beaming with joy. All of them could not wait to open the envelopes, and the banquet hall was filled with an extremely happy atmosphere. Ma Rongjin also received his own reward. When he took on the role of Yan Qixia, he was extremely down and out. He was acting as a group actor in the Lion Rock Film City and almost did not even have enough to eat, so he basically did not have any requirements for remuneration. Now that he had taken on this role with a distinct personality, Ma Rongjin could be said to have really turned over a new leaf. Other people took the initiative to approach him and offered him remuneration that was dozens of times higher than what he had received at that time. Since the release of A Chinese Ghost Story, apart from Lu Qin and Qin Fei, only two people had become famous. One was Nie Mingzhu, who played Nie Xiaoqian, and the other was Ma Rongjin. After many children were taken by their families to watch A Chinese Ghost Story, Yan Qixia was the only one who left the deepest impression on them. When they went home and played with their peers, it became very cool for them to wave the Dharma artifacts they had bought and shout, "Heaven and earth are infinite, and the universe is infinite." In the shops around the cinema, Yan Qixia's doll was selling like hotcakes. The sword and talismans that accompanied it were also selling like hotcakes. Therefore, it went without saying that he received the biggest red packet that night. After seeing the amount on the check, Ma Rongjin's feelings were really indescribable. His hand holding the check was trembling slightly. It wasn't that Ma Rongjin had never seen money before. When he was in the limelight, his personal salary was as high as a few million. This check wasn't considered much. Now, Ma Rongjin was renting a shabby house in Tianshui. The monthly rent of 1,000 yuan was enough for him to make ends meet. This check was enough for him to move to Kowloon, New Territories, and settle down. He no longer needed to worry about making a living. Compared to the salary given to him at the beginning, Lu Qin was really too generous. Ma Rongjin had been in the industry for decades and had been in the industry for decades. He had seen countless bosses, but there were really few like Lu Qin who kept his promise. While admiring him, he found an opportunity to talk to Lu Qin in private. "Young Master Lu, I want to ask, when will the sequel of A Chinese Ghost Story be filmed? A movie that sold so well must be filmed for a sequel." Ma Rongjin was extremely grateful to Lu Qin for his appreciation. Therefore, no matter how high the price others offered to poach him, his first choice was still Lu Qin's studio. Lu Qin understood what Ma Rongjin meant and replied with a smile, "The sequel will be filmed in at least a few months. Uncle Ma, if someone offers you a high price, you should accept it if you can. Don't worry about us first." Also, after a pause, Lu Qin continued, "I'm going to transfer the copyright of the sequel to Jiayang Pictures, so you can find an agent to discuss the specific contract with them. I believe that boss show won't let you suffer a loss." For Lu Qin, it was enough to make a Chinese ghost story. If he wanted to make a new movie, there were too many scripts and themes to choose from. There was no need to rely on his past. However, it was very suitable to sell it to his partner, Jiayang Pictures. The latter would also shoot it with all his heart as if he had found a treasure. Ma Rongjin was a little disappointed. He really wanted to repay Lu Qin and wanted to sign under Lu Qin's studio. He didn't expect that Lu Qin didn't have any intention of doing so, nor did he ask for repayment. He gave him the greatest freedom. This made him feel both touched and pressure he owed too much. Ma Rongjin could only say, "Then young Master Lu, if you need me in the future, just let me know. I'll be there at any time. I really can't think of anything else to repay your kindness." Lu Qin smiled and said, "Uncle Ma, you're too kind. If you need me, I won't be polite." Ma Rongjin nodded her head heavily. After giving out the red packet, the celebration was officially over. The song ended and the people dispersed. "It's really not easy for Uncle Ma," Chen Fei followed Lu Qin to send Ma Rongjin off. Looking at the departing figure, she said with emotion, "I hope he can polish his eyes and find a reliable agent." It was common for star artists to be cheated by their agents, but it was rare for them to be cheated to the extent of Ma Rongjin's original agent. Although the other party eventually suffered retribution, Ma Rongjin was also unable to recover from the setback and wasted more than 10 years. "He probably wants to sign with you, right?" In response to Chen Fei's speculation, Lu Qin nodded and said, "He should have such an idea. Unfortunately, his image has been fixed, and he will only play a supporting role in the future." Lu Qin knew very well that for Ma Rongjin, Yan Qixia was undoubtedly the peak of his acting career, and there was no possibility of surpassing it in the future. In the future, it would be difficult for him to get rid of the impression that this character left on the audience. Although Lu Qin recommended Ma Rongjin to sign under Jiayang Pictures, this was his best choice. Lu Qin, while the two were talking, a pleasant voice came from behind. Lu Qin turned around and saw Nie Mingzhu walking towards him with her assistant. She stopped in front of Lu Qin and asked, "Are you and Sister Fei going back to the capital?" Lu Qin smiled and said, "Yes." Hong Kong was the starting point of his film career, but it was definitely not the end. The capital was where his foundation was. The most important thing was that A Chinese Ghost Story had basically obtained the quota for the new film support policy. Therefore, it was time to return to the mainland to launch a new publicity plan. Nie Mingzhu turned her face and asked, "If I also go to the capital, will you welcome me?" Lu Qin and Chen Fei looked at each other and smiled. They replied in unison, "Welcome." Chapter 563. Hong Kong's new film support policy, which was also known as the Hong Kong Film Revitalization Support Plan, was released in 2016. The core of this policy was to create 100 excellent Hong Kong films and recreate the prosperity of the film and television industry. The Hong Kong government had set a special budget for this and reached a cooperation agreement with the relevant domestic departments to recommend 20 Hong Kong films, including Sino-Hong Kong co-productions, to be released in the mainland every year. This was the so-called Green Channel for Hong Kong films. According to the agreement reached between the two parties, the recommended Hong Kong films could enjoy a basic guarantee in addition to enjoying the box office share and preferential tax policies. At present, the domestic film market had become the second largest box office producer in the world, second only to the United States. The competition was naturally extremely fierce, and the pattern of competition had long been established. Unless a newcomer had a strong background in financial resources, it was undoubtedly a fool's dream to squeeze in and get a share of the pie. The domestic film industry occupied by the big shots made it difficult for small and medium-sized film and television institutions to survive. If they did not want to become the former subordinates and be willing to be exploited, they could only take the new media channel and make the so-called online movies and dramas. Hong Kong's new film support policy was equivalent to prying open a crack in the big market that had been divided up. Therefore, when the news had just spread, many film and television institutions ran to Hong Kong to seek opportunities, including some powerful large film companies. They had joined hands with their local counterparts in Hong Kong to make new films. In the end, 178 Hong Kong films, co-productions, applied to the Hong Kong government's designated review agency, the Hong Kong Film Association, for a quota. Among them, 120 passed the preliminary review. 120 films competed for 20 spots, and the ratio was 6:1. The competition could be said to be cruel. But no matter how cruel it was, as the best box office performance and the best reputation in Hong Kong at the beginning of 2017, A Chinese Ghost Story had already firmly locked in a spot. Even if the final list had not been officially released, there was basically no objection in the industry. The reason was simple. If The Chinese Ghost Story was not qualified, which film was more qualified? If the Hong Kong Film Association really blocked A Chinese Ghost Story at the door, the so-called new policy would be a joke. Of course, Lu Qin would not be complacent because of this. He had done all the work that needed to be done, and then he would focus his work back on China. Getting the quota did not mean that everything was fine. There was still a lot of work to be done for A Chinese Ghost Story to be released in the country. For example, the most crucial aspect was the cinema chain. The time and slot of the screening were all important factors that affected the box office, as well as publicity and marketing. For example, according to the agreement, Hong Kong films that were screened in the major cinemas in the country through the Green Channel had to ensure a 10% shooting rate in the first week, but there was no specific date or time period specified, so there were many tricks that could be played. Some unscrupulous cinemas would even steal the box office. Therefore, after the celebration party, Lu Qin entrusted the work of Hong Kong studio to Wan Shaoquan and Chen Wenxiang, and he flew back to China with Chen Feier to preside over the overall situation. The domestic market was the main battlefield for A Chinese Ghost Story. However, on the flight on March 1, the two of them did not directly return to Beijing. Instead, they first flew to Hangzhou. I've been looking forward to it, and you two are finally here. It was Tian who picked up the plane at Hangzhou International Airport. As soon as she saw Lu Qin and Chen Feier coming out of the VIP passage, the former beautiful host of Zhidong TV station complained, "You two, don't you want to be friends anymore?" Chen Feier was amused by her resentful look. He hugged Tian and said with a smile, "Aren't we here now? I'll take good care of you tonight." Damn it. Tian pinched Chen Feier with a red face and secretly glanced at Lu Qin next to her. The two hadn't seen each other for a while, and when they met, they seemed to have endless things to talk about. Lu Qin carried big and small bags and said with a wry smile, "Two beauties, can we go back and talk?" It was Tian who drove the car back. They first went back to her home in Hangzhou and settled down. After lunch, they went to Tian's media company together. The full name of Tian's media company was Star Factory Media Company, Limited. The name, Star Factory, was given by Lu Qin. In fact, the establishment of this media company was also his suggestion. In addition, Star Factory had Lu Qin and Chen Feier's share investment. This company was co-founded by the three of them. It was just that Lu Qin and Qin Fei had no time to manage the business. They only invested in the early stage of the company's startup, registered, selected sites, recruited employees, prepared projects, and so on. Tian was completely busy alone. The first project of Star Factory was called The Voice of China. It was in May of last year that Tian had the idea to quit and start a business. Lu Qin also provided her with the idea of The Voice of China in May, but Star Factory Media was not officially established until July. Then Tian began to recruit people to set up a project team. Because it was her first time starting a business, and she had the investment of two friends, Lu Qin and Qin Fei, she walked very steadily step by step, and could even be said to be cautious, so it was not until now that she entered the actual operating state of the project. For such a long period, Star Factory led by Tian was of course well prepared. Not only did they set up a team with rich talent show experience, but they also reached a cooperation agreement with Zhidong Satellite TV. The Voice of China was planned and produced by Star Factory Media and was scheduled to be broadcast in prime time on Zhidong Satellite TV. What the two sides signed was not the usual buyout agreement, but a rare advertising share based on ratings. On the way to the company, Tian briefly introduced the situation in the past 6 months to the two shareholders. Although she complained about how hard it was, how difficult it was to start a business alone, and how she wanted to give up several times when she encountered difficulties, it could be seen that she really wanted to break out of a new world of her own and enjoyed it. Now that everything is ready, we only need one thing. The full set of planning documents for The Voice of China had long been completed, the program team was fully staffed, the cooperation agreement was signed, and official production could start at any time. It could be said that everything was ready. There was only one problem, and that was that the list of the 4 judges had not been confirmed. This problem was neither big nor small. In fact, as early as 2 months ago, Tian had communicated with Lu Qin and Qin Fei, but it had not really been decided. When it came to this issue, Tian, who was already burning with anxiety, turned into a domineering CEO. Neither of you can run away. You must help, otherwise don't blame me for falling out. Also, you have to help me invite 2 more big names in the circle. They must be at the level of a heavenly king or queen. Chapter 564. Since the popularity of reality talent shows, there have been a lot of talent shows conducted by various domestic TV stations in recent years. Some have been a great success, while others have had little impact. The situation can be described as ice and fire. In addition to the production level and creative concept of the show itself, the guest judges and mentors are also important factors that have a direct impact on the ratings. The more famous they are, the more they can pull up the ratings. The creativity of The Voice of China is good enough, and there is no problem with the production and broadcasting. The choice of mentors has become one of the keys to the success or failure of the show, so Tian attaches great importance to it. Qin Fei wondered, didn't I ask you to contact Big Brother Tan? The Big Brother Tan that Qin Fei mentioned is, of course, Tan Hong. With Tan Hong's status in the circle, he is absolutely qualified. Tian was discouraged. I went to Beijing to see Teacher Tan, but Teacher Tan doesn't want to participate in variety shows anymore. Originally, Tan Hong didn't like to participate in variety shows. The last time he served as a judge of Singing China, it was entirely because of human relations. Now that he is basically retired, it is normal for Tian to be rejected. Oh, then, Qin Fei was also in a dilemma. It's true that she has a wide network in the circle, but she can't casually invite a real big shot to come over. If her schedule is not full, can she be called a big shot? She complained to Tian, why didn't you say so earlier? Tian has a reason, I don't want to trouble a busy person like you every time. This time, I really have no choice. She is a strong person. When she encounters difficulties, she first thinks of solving the problem by herself, rather than asking for help from others. It's just that this trouble is a bit big. Tian's family background is not bad, and she also has her own connections in the circle. But to invite a big shot to join her company's talent show, she really doesn't have enough weight. After hitting a few walls, Tian reluctantly gave up and could only turn to Qin Fei for help. Lu Chen thought for a moment and said, "Let me try." Qin Fei asked curiously, "Who are you looking for?" Lu Chen replied, "Big brother Lu Gangxing." Ah! With a scream, the BMW that was driving shook violently and almost crashed into the guardrail next to it. Caught off guard, Lu Chen and Qin Fei broke out in cold sweat. Tian, who was driving, hurriedly stabilized the steering wheel and hurriedly asked, "Is it really Lu Gangxing?" Letting out a long breath, Lu Chen raged, "Drive properly. Are you trying to kill me?" If there had been a car accident just now, the headlines tomorrow would have been about him and Qin Fei. It was better to save the headlines if possible. Whoever wanted it could take it. Tian stuck out her tongue, slowed down the car, and said guiltily, "Who told you to suddenly reveal such a big news?" "I'm a fan of Lu Gangxing. If I can really invite him, if they could invite Lu Gangxing to be a judge, they would not have to worry about the viewership ratings of The Voice of China." That was because this Xiangjiang superstar had never appeared in any talent show in the country. At that time, it would definitely cause a sensation. Don't even think about it. Lu Chen rudely interrupted her sweet dreams. "Big brother Hong Kong definitely won't be able to come. I want to ask him to help me ask around and see if we can invite a Xiangjiang senior to participate." Of the 4 mentors of China's Voice, he and Qin Fei already had 2 seats each. It would undoubtedly be more appropriate to invite another Xiangjiang singer. Xiangjiang's pop music was irreplaceable in the Chinese music industry. Oh, Tian shut her mouth, feeling a little wronged. Qin Fei could not bear to see this and pushed Lu Chen, who did not know how to be gentle with the fairer sex. "Then you should contact Big Brother Hong Kong." Lu Chen nodded and took out his phone to call Lu Gangxing. He contacted the other party's private number, which could only be reached by the number in his address book. After a while, the call connected and Lu Gangxing's unique voice came through the phone. "Lu Chen." "Hello, Big Brother Hong Kong." Lu Chen hurriedly greeted him, exchanged a few words with the Heavenly King superstar, and then explained his purpose of coming. Tian was a little resentful after being scolded by Lu Chen just now, but when she heard that Lu Chen was talking to Lu Gangxing, she could not help but prick up her ears, looking like she was itching to hear it. Lu Chen and Lu Gangxing chatted for a few minutes before ending the conversation. Qin Fei asked, "What did he say?" This was also the question that Tian was most concerned about. Lu Gangxing could not hope for too much, but it would be great to be able to invite a big shot from Xiangjiang's pop music industry. Lu Chen said, "Big Brother Hong Kong is willing to help and asked me to wait for news. It should be very soon." Qin Fei smiled and said, "That's good." If Lu Gangxing came forward, basically no one in Xiangjiang's entertainment industry would refuse to give him face, unless they really had no time or schedule to come to the mainland to participate in the program. This superstar was also a warm-hearted person. After agreeing to help, he was very efficient. Tian's car had just been parked in the parking lot downstairs of her company when she called Lu Chen's cell phone. "Well, thank you, Brother Xing, thank you so much." After ending the call again, Lu Chen's expression was a little strange. Qin Fei asked with concern, "What's wrong? Is there any trouble?" Lu Chen shook his head and said, "Big Brother Hong Kong helped us invite a mentor." Tian finally couldn't help asking, "Who is it?" Lu Chen smiled and said, "Guess." Qin Fei rolled his eyes at him and said angrily, how can we guess? Hong Kong's pop music once had an extremely glorious period. At that time, a large number of excellent singers emerged, and there were at least dozens of them who were well known to the mainland fans. Lu Chen did not keep them in suspense and directly revealed the answer: its sister Shifang. Ah! This time, Chen Feier and Tian Tian exclaimed together. Fortunately, they were not driving. Chen Feier was surprised, while Tian Tian was pleasantly surprised. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect that Lu Gangxing would actually invite Shifang. Shifang's status in Xinjiang's pop music scene was no less than Lu Gangxing's. She was also a queen-level figure in the music industry that mainland fans were familiar with. She had once held 2 concert tours in the mainland and had a great influence. Although Shifang temporarily left the music industry due to illness a few years ago, her reputation and popularity were still there, and she still had a large number of fans who liked her. If China's Voice could invite this person as a mentor, they could save millions in publicity fees. Tian Tian was overjoyed. That's really great. I have to revise the publicity plan. Lu Chen plus Chen Feier, plus Shifang. It was not as simple as 1 + 1 + 1 is equal to 3. Quantitative change led to qualitative change. However, there was still a question. Who should we invite as the last mentor? Tian Tian blinked her eyes. Her anticipation for Lu Chen directly exploded. He could always create miracles. Chapter 565. Who will be the last mentor? Big eyes blinked. Tian Tian's innocent and expectant look made Lu Chen speechless. Wasn't it enough to invite a real big shot? Chen Fei grinned. Lu Chen had a feeling that he had dug a hole and fell into it, so he simply helped her to the end. I'll make another call. In fact, he had already thought of another big name in the music industry. Brother Liao Jia, long time no see. How have you been recently? This big name in the music industry was Liao Jia, a real veteran who had played rock and roll, and also a senior in the industry. Lu Chen and Liao Jia had a good relationship. When they were in Beijing, the latter often called Lu Chen to invite him to drink. But friendship was friendship, and Lu Chen was not completely sure that he could invite this old guy with a strong personality, because Liao Jia was disdainful of the popular entertainment variety shows in China. Who told him to give Tian Tian an idea to open a company and invest in it? Liao Jia was very dissatisfied. Brother Lu Chen, if you have something to say, just say it. Do we need to play this game? Lu Chen said with a smile, then I'll say it directly. I have a friend who is going to make a singing reality show. For mentors are still missing one, so I'm looking for you. F***CK. Liao Jia scolded and asked, who are the other 3? When Lu Chen heard that there was hope, he quickly replied, me, Fei, and Shifang. Shifang. Across the phone, Lu Chen could also feel Liao Jia's surprise. Shifang from Hong Kong. Yes, said Lu Chen. Brother Lu Gangxing introduced me. F***CK. Liao Jia scolded again, you're getting bigger and bigger now. Lu Chen asked, Brother Liao Jia, can you come? Liao Jia said, count me in. By the way, who is your friend? Lu Chen explained, her name is Tian Tian. She used to be a host at Zhidong TV station. She resigned to open a new company. F***CK. Liao Jia cursed, I know, isn't it the beauty you saved last time? Did I become your mistress? Brat, you're pretty capable. You actually dared to hide it from Fei, His voice was so loud that Chen Feier and Tian Tian, who were also in the elevator, could hear him clearly. Tian Tian was so embarrassed that she couldn't even lift her head. Chen Fei couldn't stand it anymore. He grabbed Lu Chen's phone and shouted into the phone, "Liao Jia, what nonsense are you talking about? This company is owned by the three of us." She instantly transformed into a boss queen and harshly scolded Liao Jia. When the elevator reached the top floor and the door opened, Chen Fei returned the phone to Lu Qin. "Hello." Liao Jia was still there, but he seemed to have suffered quite a blow. His voice was much softer. "Got it. Get someone to contact my manager to set up a schedule. Also, there's something else." He seemed to be a little embarrassed to say it. Lu Qin stood at the door of the elevator and said with a smile, "Brother Liao, if you have something to say, just say it. Do we need to play this game?" *CK, Liao Jia's scolding was out of breath, but he still said, "Are you and Fei going to shoot a TV series this year? I want a role." The two TV series, Autumn in My Heart and Full House of Romance, starring Lu Qin and Chen Fei, won extremely high ratings in China and South Korea, and became the new benchmark of domestic TV series. Among them, Autumn in My Heart was currently popular in Hong Kong, Taiwan, Australia and several Southeast Asian countries, and became the #1 in the ratings. The overseas copyright of Full House of Romance therefore became popular and was fought over by many TV stations. With the success of these two TV series, Lu Qin's studio became a shining star in the film and television circle. When Lu Qin intended to shoot the third TV series this year, You from the Star, the search for partners was simply like a school of carps crossing the river, breaking the threshold of the studio. As for those who wanted to show their faces in the new TV series, there were even more people. Autumn in My Heart and Full House of Romance made many newcomers popular. Many people in and out of the circle came to him in a roundabout way, which made Lu Shi, who was in charge of the capital, very worried. There were too many monks and not enough porridge. There are too many monks and not enough porridge. The script of You from the Star has been written by Lu Qin. The roles in it are limited, and it is impossible to meet everyone's requirements. Unless it is a request that cannot be refused, they will all be declined. But since Liao Jia asked, Lu Qin must give him face. "No problem, as long as brother Liao Jia wants it, I can add a role for you." Lu Qin thought that Liao Jia wanted to play it himself, so it was easy to let him play a guest role. It was nothing more than a few changes. "It's not me," Liao Jia was a little embarrassed. "It's a girl. She graduated from Chinese opera several years ago. Her acting skills are not a problem." He explained a few words, which made Lu Qin understand something. "Brother Liao, is this sister-in-law?" Ahem, ahem, ahem. Liao Jia coughed hard a few times and said, "Don't make wild guesses. Tell me if it's okay or not." Lu Qin said with a smile, "Of course it's okay. Let her agent contact our studio. The role is easy to discuss." Unexpectedly, this rock and roll veteran had also come to Spring. Graduated from Chinese opera a few years ago. Wasn't that young grass? Lu Chen's smile was very ambiguous, which made Chen Fei vigilant. "What sister-in-law? What are you playing with Liao Jia?" She had always been upset about Liao Jia taking Lu Qin out to drink. She didn't have a good impression of this guy. Lu Qin quickly explained a few words, and then said to Tian, "This time everyone is here. There's no problem, right?" Tian had already returned to normal. She said with a smile, "There's no problem at all." She took Chen Fei's hand and said, "Sister Fei, even your boyfriend is more capable than you now." Tian sincerely admired Lu Qin. Along the way, in just a short 10 to 20 minutes, Lu Qin had used 2 phone calls to invite 2 powerful big shots. Moreover, one of them was even a Xiangjiang heavenly queen. With that, the 4 great mentors of China's voice were formed. There were 2 men and 2 women. There were senior big shots in the industry and rising stars in the music industry. There were also representatives from China and Xinjiang. Fame, status, popularity, and strength were all there. It was enough to show disdain for their peers. Tian had solved a big problem and was naturally overjoyed. She couldn't help but crack a joke with Chen Fei. However, Chen Fei really felt that way. If it was said that when she first met Lu Qin, the latter was still a fledgling that wanted to spread its wings. Now, he was already a soaring eagle. A small sapling was growing into a towering tree that could shelter her from the wind and rain. Right at that moment, Tian pushed open the glass door in front of her and said with a sweet smile, "Welcome to our company, 2 major shareholders." On the adjacent light gray wall, the metal logo of Star Factory shone brightly under the spotlight. Chapter 566. Let's welcome the 2 directors together. Hangzhou, Rongjing Building, Shihu District, C3901. In a spacious and tidy office area, dozens of employees of Star Factory Media Company, Limited gathered together. Under the leadership of the chairman and general manager, Miss Tian, they welcomed the 2 big-name directors to the company with warm applause. Some of the employees present were veterans who had joined half a year ago, and some were newcomers who had just joined. Everyone knew that there were 3 partners in this new media company. In addition to Tian, the former host of Zhejiang Satellite TV station, there were 2 other popular star artists in the domestic entertainment industry, Lu Qin and Chen Fei. Some employees joined Star Factory precisely because of the 2. It was just that they usually saw Lu Qin and Chen Fei on TV and the internet, but they had never seen the 2 directors in the company in reality. Although it was unlikely that Tian would fabricate the board members, it was inevitable that people would have doubts after a long time. Moreover, Star Factory's first project had been prepared for such a long time, and it had not officially started production. Although everyone's salary was paid on time every month, some employees still felt uneasy. Compared to salary, they were more concerned about the company's future development and prospects. But now, with the appearance of Lu Qin and Chen Fei, all the doubts in these employees' hearts disappeared in an instant, and their originally worried hearts were completely at ease. As for the new employees, their faces were flushed with excitement, and they clapped their hands to welcome the 2 star directors. If it were not for the company's rules, everyone would have surrounded them to ask for autographs and photos. Tian saw that the atmosphere in the office was just right, so she struck while the iron was hot and said, "In addition to inviting the 2 directors over for an inspection today, I have good news to announce to everyone." The applause suddenly disappeared, and everyone's eyes were focused on her. Our variety project, the reality talent show, The Voice of China, is about to start production, and we have invited 4 big-name people to serve as mentors, 2 of whom are right in front of you. Clap, clap, clap. The applause that had just subsided sounded again. Although everyone had expected it, hearing the good news still made them feel extremely excited. Tian continued, "The other 2 mentors, one is the domestic rock star, teacher Liao Jia, and the other is the Queen of Xinjiang, teacher Shi Fang." Wow! Although the fact that Lu Qin and Chen Fei had become the mentors of China's The Voice made everyone very excited, it was not too surprising. That was because the 2 of them were the directors of Star Factory, so they had to make good use of their powerful resources. As for the other 2 mentors, it was a pleasant surprise, a big one at that. Everyone knew that Liao Jia was a famous rock and roll veteran in the domestic music industry. He was the spiritual idol of many people. Even if there were no good new works in recent years, he still had countless fans. Shi Fang, the Queen of Hong Kong, was well known. A few years ago, she temporarily retired from the music industry due to illness. But now, if she came to the mainland to open a concert, it was guaranteed that there would be a lot of people coming to support her no matter how high the ticket price was. Most importantly, these two big shots seemed to be participating in a talent show for the first time as mentors and judges, which was undoubtedly an excellent selling point in terms of publicity. In that case, the viewership ratings of China's Voice were nothing to worry about. When the news was released, there would definitely be a sea of singers coming to sign up for the show. Everyone was excited just thinking about it and could only express their inner excitement by clapping desperately. Morale reached its peak. Seeing that the encouragement was almost done, Tian smiled and waved her hand and said, "Well, it's enough for everyone to know about this news. Don't spread it around. When the company officially makes the announcement, everyone can work with peace of mind." The employees agreed and returned to their positions, but it was obvious that they could not return to work all at once. Tian accompanied Lu Qin and Qin Fei to inspect the various departments of the company one by one. The office building rented by Star Factory, Rongjing Building, was located in the CBD of Shihu District. It was located in the bustling area of the main urban area of Hangzhou. It was very close to the West Lake Scenic Area and the surrounding transportation was extremely convenient. Of course, the rent was very expensive. Tian chose to open a company here for a reason. It was because Zhidong TV station was next to it, and there were a large number of film and television industry-related organizations around it, so they could enjoy the benefits of the cluster. Tian's boldness was also very big. The office building was rented on the highest floor of Rongjing Building, with an area of more than 400 square meters. The company had marketing, public relations, publicity, design, production, and other departments. At present, the number of employees was more than 50, and the scale was no less than some of the veteran peers. Of course, the larger the scale, the greater the expenses. Although Star Factory had also taken on some outsourced projects since its establishment, the real self-produced project had not yet started. At present, it was in a state of sitting idle. Therefore, Tian was trying her best to pull the two directors, Lu Qin and Qin Fei, over and officially finalize the project of The Voice of China. "If you guys don't come, I'm really going to jump down from here." In the chairman's office, Tian complained to Qin Fei, "Do you two know that I haven't been sleeping well in recent months? I've lost a few pounds. My mom told me not to run this company anymore and to disband it earlier." Qin Fei held her in his arms and said with a smile, "Aren't we here now? It's been hard on you. Don't tire yourself out too much. Hire a professional manager to share the work." Tian explained, "It's not easy to poach professional managers in this field. I've already hired a headhunter company to look for one. After The Voice of China is broadcasted, I believe it will be much easier." The current situation of domestic variety shows was that on one hand, there were all kinds of talent shows and entertainment shows emerging one after another. On the other hand, there was a lack of professional talents. When Tian founded Star Factory, it took a lot of effort to poach a group of people. It was all thanks to the two directors' reputable names. Otherwise, if she were to rely on herself, others might not have taken a liking to her. The composition of Star Factory Media's shares was very simple. Tian, as the chairman and legal representative, owned 40% of the shares. Lu Qin and Qin Fei each owned 30%. The company's registered capital and actual investment were both 10 million. Although it had only been established for slightly more than half a year and was still considered a newcomer in the industry, Star Factory Media's starting point could be said to be very high. That was because the two directors were sufficiently famous. In fact, for Lu Qin and Qin Fei, their investment was more out of consideration for friendship. It was to support Tian's independent venture, and not because they wanted to make a lot of money. However, for Tian, this company was the focus of her life and career. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.